Hello, and welcome to Are You Karate Kidding
Your
Me?
source for recaps, analysis, and items of interest from all around the Miyagi-verse.
I'm your host, Colin Canada.
I am your host, Jenny Carlson.
And we are back in the saddle again for a big Saturday night movie.
Yippee-ki-yay, we go our way. So I want to say a thing before we start, and that is that I was really apprehensive about watching this movie, right? It was my least favorite. I think it's a lot of people's least favorite. But I have to say, I knew this when we were watching Cobra Kai that they had gone back and found a lot of plot material. I mean, obviously I remember the beats of this film, but I am really impressed with how much the issues with this movie became plot points in Cobra Kai. And I'll return to that later. Probably won't be able to say much except for some Easter egg hunt references as we analyze the film on its own merit. But I just wanted to tag that and say, man, I had a much better experience watching this than I anticipated. Because I hate the villain and rarely see this film.
Well, that's very kind and generous of you. And we'll do a much more in-depth review at the end. But I find this movie delightfully cheesy, even though it does kind of throw most of the beloved character and development that we've gotten from the first two movies under the bus. Mm-hmm. It does create for one of the most gloriously cheesy 80s of 80s movies, and I would recommend it for any sort of dumb movie night that you're having on Zoom these days.
Yeah, it represents a kind of 80s movie that nostalgia for the 80s doesn't quite approximate or capture.
Exactly.
Like, you know, when people talk about the 80s, they're either angry at a Ghostbusters reboot or they're in love with Stranger Things. But this is something else. This is a level of cheese that a lot of people want to forget, but tells you a lot about the 80s.
It does.
So, without further ado, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready. Without further ado, let's jump into The Karate Kid.
Part 3. The Legend of Terry's Gold.
Start out with a familiar lady, the Columbia Pictures logo.
She always makes me feel so good because I remember when I was 3 years old watching Annie, and then later, The Karate Kid.
Give us your tired, your weary, your poor moviegoers yearning to breathe free.
Your sad, lonely celluloid waiting to be shared. And now, because it's the 80s, we are going to see a montage.
Oh yeah, we get a little bit of previously on The Karate Kid.
We see Daniel meeting Mr. Miyagi and learning about bonsai trees, of course.
Bonsai tree.
Mr. Miyagi giving Daniel his tenugui. And also, Daniel going into another dojo, the Cobra Kai dojo.
We're getting all the beats that we need from the first two movies to help inform us going into the third one. I mean, we could just copy and paste our commentary from the previous two Karate Kid movies right in here, but I guess we won't do that. We will, I'll do like that the plaque on the outer door of Kreese's office just says Sensei.
Does it really?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, I thought you were joking.
We have to get one of those for our house.
I need that now.
Yeah.
We see all of the speech where Kreese is saying that the enemy deserves no mercy and looking at Johnny as Johnny says that they're there. We see all of it because they're setting up the rivalry between Kreese and Mr. Miyagi. Also, the dynamic between Johnny and Daniel with a bully and an underdog, and Mr. Miyagi pushing back against Kreese, right?
Too much advantage. Your dojo.
This is all really important at this moment, actually. It says we're introducing Thomas Ian Griffiths as, with quote marks, Terry.
I know.
Terry.
And a special appearance by Martin Kove.
I'll say, it's a very special appearance by Martin Kove.
Whenever that guy shows up, it's quite special indeed.
Yes.
Now we must flash to the tournament. We see Johnny Lawrence getting kicked in the nose and Daniel injured but fighting on. We see Kreese telling Johnny to do some dirty tricks.
And as of the release of this movie, all these events are technically taking place 3 years ago. But
no, I think it's even
real life.
No, it's not. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, in real life they're taking place 3 years ago. In movie time, they're taking place maybe 3 months ago.
No, they're taking place 5 years ago because it goes 84, 86, and then 89.
Fair.
But this is just last year for the people who live in the Miyagi-verse. And now, of course, we see the wind-up to the crane kick. We hear Kreese screaming, Mr. Miyagi nods, and Daniel looks truly menacing, and boom, chucks Johnny Lawrence in the nose, and Johnny crawls away. I've never seen anyone crawl on their face before that, and I never have since.
I mean, I don't blame him. I would do the same. But, I mean, yeah, like, this little package is like the greatest hits of Karate Kid 1 and 2 on CD and cassette. You get all the classics like Sweep the Leg.
Sweep the leg.
Get him a body bag.
Get him a body bag! Yeah!
Indeed. And also you get to see Kreese choking Johnny as Johnny turns beet red in the parking lot, and Mr. Miyagi tells Kreese to let him go. And of course, Mr. Miyagi grabs Kreese from behind, frees Johnny. This is something I will never understand, and it becomes a plot point, so I feel justified in lingering on it for a moment, right? Mr. Miyagi dodges Kreese once and makes Kreese's knuckles bleed because Kreese plunges his hand through a car window. Then he comes for Mr. Miyagi again, only for Mr. Miyagi to do the exact same dodge. Like, if Kreese is truly that menacing, why does he seem kind of like, you know, Han Solo on a real dumb day?
Laugh it up, fuzzball.
That is a very good point. I think that's the thing, right? It's like this was intended to be the end of Karate Kid 1, and maybe as the end of Karate Kid 1, it's still a little bit of a first draft, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's fine at the beginning of Karate Kid 2 because
It
by
ends
the
with
time you've gotten through all of Karate Kid 2, you barely remember this opening part and how weird it is.
Well, and it's worth noting that it ends with a joke, with Mr. Miyagi honking Kreese's nose rather than actually knocking him senseless. And, of course, that is worse than taking a punch, right? Because it's shaming, right? So we can see that this is a shamed dude down on his luck, as we do because now Kreese, looking mega hungover and unshaven, is wandering into his dojo, really actually kind of looking like Johnny Lawrence on a down day.
Yeah, he is definitely looking like Johnny Lawrence on a down day. And, man, the Cobra Kai dojo is not looking great, despite it only having been a few months
In Miyagi-verse time.
Since the tragic defeat at the All Valley tournament. But apparently that was enough to turn the fortunes of the entire dojo on their ear and basically make it so that Kreese is now officially down on his luck.
Though not too down on his luck to straighten his military karate champion framed picture, right?
Right.
In he goes to the office, and man, again, like, this lingering in the office with the blinds and everything, it is very Cobra Kai in its way.
Oh, yeah, no, Johnny was definitely thinking of this, and I completely understand that instinct. Like, this was the model that he used for his dojo when it was time for him to build his dojo, because in a weird, twisted way, like, this is probably one of the happiest times that Johnny had as a teenager, right?
Yep.
Right up until he got his face punched in.
While Kreese is sitting in his office, he first has a voicemail from Pat Johnson, the referee, saying, "Sorry, you lost all your students. Guess we'll drop you from the membership rolls of the All Valley." And then also...
Yeah. Pat Johnson here. I've got some exposition for you.
He also gets a call from a bill collector.
Mr. Kreese, this is Pacific Bill. This is the final call regarding...
Setting up some of the same exact plot arcs. Johnny's apparent loserdom and down on his luckness is a shared trait with John Kreese, who we now see at a vaguely Asian mansion, kind of like Asian brutalist mansion.
We're up in the hills now. I guess if Cobra Kai was down in Reseda, we're now up in the Los Angeles hills, and we're at a nouveau riche, LA mansion with, kind of weird Aztec quasi, Amazon brickwork. Maybe, it looks...
If they made Inception in the 80s, it would be shot here.
It's a Los Angeles mansion, so it's either someone production designed it or a production designer was also an architect. But in Hollywood, right, it's like one and the same.
Meanwhile, there's a guy in a silken-looking gi with the cobra on the back, a Cobra Kai cobra, and a little coke dealer ponytail going on, and his name is Terry Silver, as we're about to find out. Kreese has arrived and is going to give him the keys, saying he will pay him the back rent as soon as possible. Terry has been wailing on some dudes training, and meanwhile he's having issues with his plutonium business. He dumps nuclear waste. That's right, because he's the CEO of Dynatox, right?
That's right.
So he's signing off on some papers and telling Kreese, "Don't worry, your business is just in a slump."
Yeah, he grabs Kreese around the shoulder in his luxurious silken Cobra Kai gi.
It is truly something.
Yeah. And yeah, now they're on the balcony overlooking the LA skyline. And apparently, so Terry was the landlord for Cobra Kai, and Kreese was just renting from him.
Yeah, they go way back, and so
Yeah.
Terry informs Kreese that he's not out. He's just on his way to Tahiti to take a break. And now, as he's driving Kreese to the airport, he's explaining all the ways that he's going to make them suffer.
And suffer, and when I think they've suffered enough, then I start with the pain.
Because it's not over. They're Cobra Kai, and he has to say it. What do you say when you're Cobra Kai?
Say it, Cobra Kai.
Never dies.
You bet your ass. So, Kreese is saying, I owe you. Terry's saying, you don't owe me anything because of Vietnam.
Yep.
So I don't quite know what happened in Vietnam. Now, that might be the prequel we all needed.
There's a whole separate, war movie that these two experienced. I mean, hopefully one day we'll get to see it.
Maybe.
These guys lived like a platoon.
I got no pain in my neck, man.
Feeling good's good enough.
Or an Apocalypse Now.
I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
And I could definitely see the prequel, right, where it's like Terry's like the rich kid that doesn't know what the f he's doing. And...
Wait, hang on. I have to interrupt you because now that Kreese has gone into the airport looking on his way to relaxation, we have Daniel and Mr. Miyagi emerging from the same airport.
Ah, smog. Smells like home, huh, Mr. Miyagi?
That's right. So this all takes place concurrently. Having just seen the intro package doesn't do Ralph a lot of favors because it's like you can clearly see that he's grown like a foot.
He's out of high school now. They are now heading to the South Seas apartment complex, only to find out that because it is the 80s, they are being renovated, demolished, something. They will be transformed into the Reseda Hills condominiums.
And then at some point between then and 2015, they will get remodeled back into the South Seas apartments, apparently.
Mrs. Milo and her dog are outside, and it looks like they're put out of a home. She's got to find another place. She says that she knew all along. Progress. She also tells Daniel that she's got a message from her mother, and that she said, didn't I tell you that Bum would sell that place? I love this because they clearly just brought her back to have her on. Mm-hmm. She's convenient exposition. Anyway, she's telling Daniel to call collect at his Uncle Louie's, but it's so neat to see her there because it just reminds me that John Avildsen was so into Frank Capra, who would always work with the same people and bring them back to have that ensemble vibe. So just to see her get that little scene is really fantastic.
Yeah, they were real Mercury players, these guys.
Meanwhile, they've gone to Mr. Miyagi's room there, and they're on the phone with Randy Heller, with Lucille, who is with a almost comically coughing Uncle Louie.
Yeah, so this is the Uncle Louie that we've heard so much about. Unfortunately, he's doing pretty poorly. He's got a bad case of emphysema and doesn't look like he's going to do very well. But again, this just gives Lucille a convenient excuse to call in absent to the movie, where she's like, well, Daniel, you could stay with Mr. Miyagi. He's your ersatz dad now, so have fun.
They're also setting up that Kumiko is not coming.
Oh, that's true.
Because apparently she got this great job with a dance company in Tokyo and just couldn't say no.
That's true.
Life moves pretty fast in the Miyagi-verse. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it. But they don't have a lot of time to talk to Lucille because Uncle Louie, again, is coughing unto death.
Man, Uncle Louie's really selling it back there.
I know.
But sadly, that is the last we will see of those two. It's time to grab our bonsai trees and hit the road.
Yeah, Daniel's grabbing these bonsai trees, and they're loading up the back of Mr. Miyagi's truck. And Mr. Miyagi looks genuinely forlorn about the situation, which I understand. Again, it's the 80s, and I'm not really sure what's left of the social net that was set up during the New Deal and the Great Society. But Mr. Miyagi's looking around. His bamboo chimes are going off above him. And, man, this looks like a big room when there's nothing in it. He's got one little bonsai tree left, though.
Bonsai tree.
One tiny, tiny bonsai tree.
Bonsai tree.
I think we might break the Mr. Miyagi bonsai tree machine
Also,
if we keep saying it throughout the whole movie.
His bonsai tree... His last bonsai tree that he's picking up from his little workroom has autumn leaves on it, I guess symbolizing that Mr. Miyagi is in the autumn of his life.
And this movie's not huge on subtlety, so I wouldn't put it past them that's exactly what they're trying to telegraph with this kind of a scene.
And Daniel wants to know what Mr. Miyagi's going to do now. And Mr. Miyagi does not know, which is fair because he only just learned of his firing a few minutes ago. And Daniel has the great inspiration of asking, did you ever think of opening a bonsai store? Which Mr. Miyagi says he had in his dream, his retirement.
And to which Daniel replies,
What do you call this?
I don't think Daniel understands how Social Security works. Well, Mr. Miyagi says it's
Call time to go.
because Mr. Miyagi always has a way with words.
true.
But Daniel's not going to forget about those bamboo wind chimes, and in fact, he's going to take him down now.
So we say farewell to a beloved set because we're now headed back to the Miyagi Manse, the original one.
Indeed.
Which later becomes Miyagi-Do, but right now it's just their house where...
Daniel is unloading bonsai trees from the bed of Mr. Miyagi's truck onto a work table.
You know, I've been thinking about the bonsai shop idea.
And Mr. Miyagi says that he couldn't do a bonsai tree store because they helped build a house for Yukie in Okinawa.
Yeah, so apparently they spent the summer building Yukie's house?
Yeah.
That's wild. But again, not unexpected. Mr. Miyagi's a real softy when he wants to be.
I mean, I'm a little confused as to why that was necessary. Okay, I should add that Daniel's trying to make Mr. Miyagi take his college money because in California, you apparently carrying around your college fund in bills that you just keep in a wad that you take across international borders.
Okay, look. One, we don't know when he was at the bank. Two, this is kind of at the dawn of ATMs. It's like you're carrying around a big stack of cash in your wallet, and tuitions were lower back then. And it's conceivable, if only just.
Well, Daniel didn't wait for Mr. Miyagi. He has now headed off in the banana boat to the Century 21 office. And there he's going to get it all taken care of.
Meanwhile, at Silver Manor...
Terry is on the phone. Is he in a steamer?
Yeah, he's in his sauna. He's actually on the phone with Kreese, who is now firmly ensconced at Tahiti.
Yes.
Getting a double massage from two young ladies.
Yes, like he's in season 2 of Money Heist.
Profesor, soy Nairobi.
Empieza el matriarcado.
Meanwhile, Terry is sitting in a steamer, perfect, with glass bricks. Just, this is so 80s nouveau riche.
And champagne.
And apparently, just going on and on and on about how he's going to destroy Daniel's life.
And you know what he's going to learn from me? Pain in every part of his body. Fear in every part of his mind.
Right, that's a line we know from another area of the Miyagi-verse.
Terry has some grand plans here, and he's not shy about laying them all out to Kreese. They're having a bit of a brainstorming session over the phone. Kreese wants to make sure that... he has a bullet point in the plan. They're doing that thing where you're in a work meeting and you have to make sure you contribute something so you at least have something to put on your productivity report, So he's like...
Make his knuckles bleed.
That's Kreese's only big contribution to the plan.
All that Terry really can do this is kind of...
Oh, I like that, Johnny.
Like...
I'm going to use that.
Rumpelstiltskin style hop with his robe, with his giant bath towel on. And now, of course, he's dressed up like in a tux. Yeah. He's walking outside. He's trying to pick out a car, I believe. He's in between making calls to help find new places to dump his toxic waste, but for now his business is strictly revenge.
He's like some sort of a weird anti-Bruce Wayne where he's really into the whole deception of it all to where he's I need to pick out just the right car to look like I'm a schlub from the street, and I need to win Daniel's confidence, so I'm going to dress poor, and revenge is my business for the next few weeks.
It really blows my mind to think about the fact that this came out in the same year as Batman 1989.
I mean, Terry would be right at home in Batman 1989.
I have a feeling that Terry's actually really good friends with Jack Palance's character in Batman 1989.
That's probably who he's been on the phone with in a couple of these.
That's exactly right.
It's an important job. You are my number one guy.
I know.
Okay, so now he's on the way to his event, right? He's picked out a car from an array of cars that he's going to use to deceive Daniel. Now he's in the back of a limo or a fancy car being driven somewhere, and he's going through the karate magazine where he sees a feature on karate's bad boy, Mike Barnes. And
Representing the Cobra Kai, the challenger, Mike Barnes. Come on, right now. Let's go, punk.
Mike Barnes.
Mr. Silver, you just bought yourself a champion.
Mike Barnes.
And you can dream about me.
Karate's bad boy. Mike Barnes.
And there we see Sean Kanan's face plastered across a page looking very menacing. Meanwhile, back at the Miyagi Manse, Mr. Miyagi is grilling what looks like some very delicious meat. And Daniel has returned home looking like the cat who got the cream.
the only beef Miyagi's interested in is Wagyu. And yeah, Daniel gets home just in time to deliver some good news.
Well,
to
Daniel thinks it's good news.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Daniel's good news he delivers to Miyagi over dinner, which is...
Mr. Miyagi says, how's college? And Daniel's like, well, I didn't go because indeed I sunk my big old wad of cash. He says, this is my college diploma. Ha ha ha.
Yes, you have sense of humor.
Mr. Miyagi always graciously tells Daniel he has a sense of humor, even when Daniel isn't really being that funny.
Yeah.
But at this moment, this thing that he's given Mr. Miyagi is 1 month's security and 2 months' rent for his bonsai store.
Yeah. He didn't even buy the building. He just got the lease.
Well, I mean, you said yourself, college wasn't that expensive back then.
That's true, but a building is.
Yes, with just enough left over for renovations if we're careful.
And so Daniel has basically given Miyagi the gift of debt. And so what they're going to do is...
Better to go into debt for Mr. Miyagi than for the academic industrial complex.
Okay, I just can't take courses to take courses. You know, I'll get bored, and then once that happens, forget about it.
Fair, but, I mean, this sets off a string of what I consider to be very frustrating decisions from Daniel. He's really, really pressing his luck in this narrative to where, you know, as a character, he's backslid tremendously from Karate Kid 1.
Yes, he has. Well... He's taken the wrong lessons away, right? In that sense, he's on a parallel trajectory with Johnny Lawrence. He has internalized being a champ, but he still is not seeing the part of it that comes from him. It's all about making Mr. Miyagi happy and solving things rather than accepting things, right? He doesn't quite have that aspect of balance down.
What a moment. What a moment. You are now crossing over to the right side of the tracks.
So now we've arrived. We've gone across the railroad tracks, and now we are at a sort of warehouse-looking building with corrugated steel in front of it, a beware of dog sign.
Trash scattered about.
There's a pottery shop across the street, though. That looks promising.
Yeah, and here's the super frustrating part. In the same building as the pottery store, there's another space already for rent. Daniel could have had a better space immediately across the street from the space that he got.
But your college fund can only pay for so much.
I'm telling you, the landlord says this neighborhood is up and coming, and I believe her, too.
Daniel is thrilled to show Mr. Miyagi around. This place is pretty junked up, but Daniel tells Miyagi, looks can be deceiving. They have the potential here. You have to think potential. It's the 80s, man.
Well, this is textbook Daniel, as we've come to know him over the years, is... his eyes are bigger than his stomach as far as his ambition goes, right? It's
yes.
like, it's the same pattern that we kind of see him repeat in Cobra Kai, where it's like, once he gets his teeth into an idea, he's very stubborn, and he will not let go of an idea, no matter how ill-conceived it is at the start.
Just to try to lure him into opening his own bonsai tree store.
Mr. Miyagi's Little Trees was a solid business plan. We just ran into some bad luck.
But he's very sweet in this, right? Like, he's talking about having a little bonsai hospital in one corner of the place, and then he's going to work for free, and he's even thought of a name. They're going to call it Mr. Miyagi's Little Trees.
Bonsai.
And, you know, Pat Morita is the soul of this whole thing, and that's why it's the Miyagi-verse, right? Like, he looks moved. He looks truly kind of proud, chuffed, and moved, even though he disagrees with all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like... Daniel's sweetness is something he can't avoid.
That's true. I mean, Daniel's heart is very gregarious. He's a very charismatic person. And so Mr. Miyagi very, very reluctantly agrees to go along with this plan. One, because Daniel is so sweet, and two, well, frankly, what else are they going to do?
Well, when Mr. Miyagi goes, your name on the lease next to mine, partner, and then they bow and he says, arigato, like, that's truly a sweet moment, you know?
Yeah, that is definitely the sweetest read.
Meanwhile, back at Terry Silver's Tower of Terror, Terry is on his fake antique phone, talking about why can't he dump his toxic waste in Borneo.
He is chest deep in a bubble bath with his secretary sitting next to the bubble bath, taking minutes, I guess.
This is like straight out of Arthur, right? He's Dudley Bourne. He's even got his own Hobson-like secretary sitting there.
I'm going to take a bath. Do you want to run my bath for me?
Perhaps you'd like me to come in there and wash your dick for you.
He's evil Arthur.
Indeed.
Eviler Arthur.
Evil. Hey, Arthur's not evil. He's just confused.
Fair.
He never had a good role model. Terry is apparently dealing with a grand jury, and he will bribe them, as usual.
You know, Terry, you not 2 scenes ago said all your business is going to be revenge until further notice, and this is not revenge business. This is talking poached salmon.
Oh, but wait. Enter Mike Barnes, who has been
the
brought
bad boy
down.
of karate?
He's the bad boy of karate, and he's got the flat top buzz to prove it.
Representing the Cobra Kai, the challenger, Mike Barnes.
And you can dream about me.
Karate's bad boy, Mike Barnes.
So Terry is telling him to consider himself home, and then his butler ushers in 2 dudes who look kind of like the Outsiders version of the Goonies.
Wow. I mean, I could definitely see it now that you describe them that way. Apparently, there are a couple of ne'er-do-wells that Terry has hired to be Mike Barnes' pals for this movie.
Exactly.
Just, again, extra hired muscle on top of Mike Barnes' already, appreciable muscle.
Terry has, we have learned, acquired 20 dojos, and he's offering Mike Barnes 25%. But now apparently he's going to give Mike Barnes, a man he just met today, 50%.
Well, yes, exactly. In a typical 80s negotiation, Terry's like...
Do you fight as hard as you negotiate?
And Mike Barnes is like...
Harder.
And Terry's like...
You got your 50%.
And then Terry actually is a little smitten with Mike Barnes. He's like...
Yeah, he's perfect.
Which I guess if you're an evil guy, I mean, this is classic supervillain recruiting 101.
Meanwhile, at the Devil's Cauldron, Mr. Miyagi and Daniel are harvesting a tiny little pine tree that they are going to take home. Daniel is joking with the tree as they wrap it in burlap, saying,
Any bonsai in here?
But Mr. Miyagi explains,
Not inside you.
that Daniel comes from inside you. It's the same place your karate comes from. This is a key scene. And Daniel goes, but my karate comes from you. And Mr. Miyagi says,
Only root karate comes from Miyagi.
just like the bonsai tree,
Choose one way grow because root is strong.
and you're doing the karate for the same reason. And Daniel reiterates, yeah, but I do it your way. Mr. Miyagi insists, in an adorable, almost alpine-looking hat.
Hey, one day you do one way.
Daniel and Miyagi have a little walk and talk over the Northern California wilderness.
This is clearly a metaphor for mentorship and growing up, right? Daniel's talking about how they do train the bonsai to grow, but Mr. Miyagi says, well, there are real bonsai that grow wild in this way, but they're all in Okinawa. And Daniel says, what about here? Mr. Miyagi only knows of one. And, then he explains to Daniel that he brought it. It's the only thing he brought with him from Okinawa.
Okay, yeah, this is wild. So apparently, in the Devil's Cauldron Park in California, Mr. Miyagi smuggled a bonsai from Okinawa and hid it inside this cavernous space in the park, right?
Yep.
And completely violating any sort of import-export, like how did he? Man, that's another movie. Is how did he smuggle this thing in?
Who knows, man? Back when Mr. Miyagi came over, though, customs was not what it is today.
Fair.
So meanwhile, they are doing kata. They bow to each other and are going through all the different positions. It's really a beautiful scene with the music, and you can tell that Ralph and Pat just have such a great sense of each other.
Well, this is where it gets wild because we're out on this cliffside doing the kata. It's a special kata that Mr. Miyagi informs us. And then we crossfade to a wild helicopter shot where we're close in on like a 2/3 body of Pat Morita and Ralph Macchio, and the helicopter just pulls back.
We see the Devil's Cauldron roiling below.
Yeah, and this is 1989. This is not, this is pre-drone. So they had to do this in a helicopter with like a super stable cameraman.
It's just like Julie Andrews in The Sound of Music, right? The hills are alive with the sound of wisdom from Mr. Miyagi.
That's right.
But we're back now at Mr. Miyagi's little trees. Mr. Miyagi's in here putting stuff together they're going to have to clean or fix up. And Daniel walks in with a tree saying, I figured you might want to give it another try. He's going to give this tree another shot, even though they didn't have good luck with it at the house. Anyway, they put it on a work table. talking about how it's bigger than he thought, and he gives Mr. Miyagi his charcoal and his paper. And now I'm going to ruminate on a fan theory I have, which is in the DVD special features for The Karate Kid Part 1, Pat Morita said that he designed the Miyagi-Do logo, right, with a bonsai in front of the sun. And I was also talking to Brianna and some other folks on Twitter about this a while back. But, you know, when Pat said that, he was on the commentary track with Ralph and Robert Mark Kamen, and also Avildsen, and none of them corrected him. But in this scene, we see Pat Morita beginning to draw on the piece of paper with his charcoal. And I think that in Pat's memory, he confused drawing the bonsai himself freehanded here with designing the Miyagi-Do logo overall.
That's a very interesting theory.
But,
yeah. But yes, that could very well be the case.
Daniel is also telling Mr. Miyagi that now the tournament has removed the rule that he has to fight, he just has to defend. And he's trying to convince Mr. Miyagi to train him for this next tournament. But Mr. Miyagi is explaining that if you're just doing this to win a tournament, karate doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, Daniel explains that conveniently the All Valley tournament has decided, all the previous year's competitor has to do is defend the title rather than fight in the entire tournament, which is good for Daniel, who wants to re-enter, I guess because this might be his last opportunity to do the under-18 All Valley tournament without the immediate threat of Cobra Kai or Johnny Lawrence to fight against. It is a little unclear why Daniel is so keen to get back into the tournament other than just his own, notoriety, right?
Boy, he really is keen.
But she's so keen.
Now he's headed over across the street because Mr. Miyagi, deflected the discussion by telling Daniel, go get a pot for a bonsai tree. And there he meets Jessica Andrews, who is played by Robin Lively, a.k.a. Teen Witch.
Stop that! Big deal. Stop that! Unreal. You can try to, you blue. I will make a fool of you. Stop that!
That's right. Robin Lively is here, guys. And she's here to be our best friend for Daniel for this movie. She's a pottery artist, and she's doing the classic ghost pottery wheel maneuver minus Patrick Swayze. Daniel comes in, they do a little bit of cursory introductions. Daniel instantly wants to play an angle, which is, hey, you do pottery, we sell trees, why don't you make some pots for our trees, maybe with little bonsais on them. Jessica's into the idea. So yeah, it's a fun little meet cute here.
It is. Now Daniel points out a picture of Jessica rock climbing with some dude whose head is pulled off.
Hey, rock climbing, huh? Interesting.
Exactly. But apparently that guy ran off with some woman or something. She says some other lady happened to him. And so, meanwhile, back to the pots. Daniel is asking if they could put the bonsai tree on the side, and she's, yes, willing to emboss it. And they're having this conversation, but there's a loud honking coming from outside. It's, again, kind of like the virginal arm.
That was my virginal arm.
A little bit, yeah. Yeah, Jessica and Daniel have other things to do, unfortunately. But, this movie needs an action girl, so it's convenient that they've got one right across the street from Mr. Miyagi's little trees.
Especially one who knows her way around ropes in a harness.
Well, I mean, in the rock climbing way, not the other way.
I didn't know there was one. Daniel is heading outside, and we hear that honking of that car, but we never see the car. It's not just a ghost moment, it's a ghost car. Back at Mr. Miyagi's little trees, Mr. Miyagi is nearly done shaping that bushy old pine into something that looks very much like a tiny German Tannenbaum.
Miyagi's got a lot going on here. So he's sketching the tree, and then he's doing the bonsai to look like the sketch, which is pretty wild. I didn't know you did it that way.
Probably Mr. Miyagi didn't either until Daniel gave him the piece of paper and his charcoal. Anyway, Daniel is going through the fragments of the other tree branches, and Daniel's like,
Yeah, actually I did. I found a date. You didn't send me over there just to look at pots, did you, huh?
Daniel is ever thinking of one thing, but he finds that Mr. Miyagi did not sign the entry form for the All Valley tournament, and Daniel just, is persistent as ever, saying,
Miyagi, I understand your feelings on this. I mean, I do, but you have to understand mine. This is the biggest thing I've ever done in my life.
Yeah, Daniel has a real fight-or-flirt reflex, and having just finished flirting, he's back to wanting to fight.
Indeed. Well, Daniel can't see any way out of repeating the greatness that he's already achieved, right? And Mr. Miyagi is pushing him to look inside himself, but Daniel, all he has inside himself, he says, is
The only thing living inside me right now is a lot of confusion.
Truthometer equals true on that one.
Daniel is not pleased when Mr. Miyagi says that really he should just put a match to it and watch his confusion disappear in smoke. Meanwhile, back at Mr. Miyagi's house, a door is mysteriously opening as Daniel hums a strange song on his way from the shower back to his little room on the side of Mr. Miyagi's house.
Yeah, so Daniel's really made himself at home here at the Miyagi Man's. Oh my God.
He's doing some Dancing with the Stars stuff way early on.
Last week, Ralph nailed the character of the jive, but the judges thought he needed more control.
Yeah.
And he's also borrowing Mr. Miyagi's Hawaiian shirt.
Yeah, and doing a very ridiculous dance while drying his hair in his room, much to the wonderment of one Terry Silver, who is now skulked in kind of
a drapey All Saints Evil Man's jacket.
He's got his house robbing gear on, minus any sort of mask here, but he's gonna pull a wet bandits on Daniel and Mr. Miyagi. He's here to get some intel, apparently. He's gonna skulk through the house a bit, see what he can find out about Mr. Miyagi and Daniel. So he finds Mr. Miyagi's backstory box, and the first thing in it is a big Los Angeles Tribune clipping that's talking about Japanese internments. He's got Mr. Miyagi's battalion patch, picture of Mr. Miyagi's wife, another headline about the 442nd.
Yeah, confirming Mr. Miyagi's connection to the 442nd. Silver's like,
Perfect.
he's already got his evil plan.
His earring is practically twinkling with good ideas on how to sink Daniel and Mr. Miyagi's fortunes. Again, he's going to have to pull a Home Alone because just as he gets a gander of Mr. Miyagi's Medal of Honor, the one that Hawk will steal so many years from now, he's interrupted as Mr. Miyagi's car pulls up.
Yeah, but not before he finds a flyer for Mr. Miyagi's Little Trees grand opening with his trademark smirk. And now, but then he's looking at this as Mr. Miyagi's car pulls up. Also, we see Daniel coming back in. So what's he going to do, right? How will he solve this conundrum?
Terry makes himself scarce just in time to see this little scene. Daniel closes the window that Terry came in, seemingly oblivious. Mr. Miyagi comes in the front door. Apparently, Mr. Miyagi's been out partying, as he is often wont to do.
Bonsai!
He came back to the house to grab a
good luck idol.
Some sort of good luck statue. Daniel is going to take Mr. Miyagi's advice to heart, and he's going to burn up this tournament entry form.
He's going to let his confusion go up in smoke, and Mr. Miyagi looks very proud of Daniel for wanting his karate to mean something. So Daniel puts it in the grate of a fireplace that I had never noticed before now. Mr. Miyagi congratulates him on his good decision, and they both head out together because, of course, Daniel is off to see Jessica, and Mr. Miyagi is heading back to the shop with his good luck statue.
Oh, see, that's why Daniel wanted Mr. Miyagi's
because Daniel thinks he's got
party
a date.
shirt. Yeah.
Exactly. So meanwhile, the grate in the fireplace, we see Terry Silver's feet coming down and stepping out the fire as Terry coughs. Then we cut to Daniel picking Jessica up, and Jessica says that first she has to tell him something.
Jessica has to embarrassingly admit that she can't be his love interest for this movie, having only had one scene with him prior.
Indeed.
See, unfortunately, the mysterious stranger in the rock climbing picture earlier was, in fact, her ex-boyfriend, and she doesn't want him to be ex-boyfriend anymore. He's coming back, and she's going to give him another chance, and also she's going to move away forever in about a week.
Well, back to Columbus, Ohio.
Right. But the fact of the matter is, her participation in this movie is on a timer, and Daniel's like, you know what, that's okay. We don't have any other characters in this movie anyway, so I'll be happy to stick around and go on some platonic dates with you for the next week or two.
This time when a character tells you it's not a date, you can safely believe them.
I just didn't want to lead you on or anything.
This is a weird deal because, like, It's an interesting commentary on how women figure into these kind of movies because they're like, well, you got to have a girl, but we got to make it clear that he can't just always have girlfriend.
Right. I mean, we can get into this in the analysis portion, but it's really interesting what they choose to do with Jessica as a character in this movie.
Daniel is walking Jessica across the road to meet Mr. Miyagi. Of course, Mr. Miyagi and Jessica are mutually charmed.
That's right. It's a second meet cute. In fact, it's an even cuter meet than the first meet cute.
It is. And he's like, I'm actually auditioning for my next Karate Kid. And she was like, I would love it, but I actually have to go rock climb. And he's like, I'll look for another slightly red-haired woman.
Oh my gosh, I didn't make that connection till just now, but you're right. They may have intended for Jessica to be the next Karate Kid.
It would not surprise me.
Yeah, may had to do some last-minute rewrites, but we'll get to that in the next Karate Kid episode.
Yes, indeed. So here we are. Daniel's giving Jessica a tour of Mr. Miyagi's little trees and, showing her the good luck statue and how excited he is. Daniel is ever enterprising. I will say this for him. Like, he's very committed and he sticks with something, committed to the point of stubbornness. And they're talking about karate and that he knows it. And she responds that he doesn't look like the karate teacher type. And Daniel's like,
half the time he teaches me stuff, I don't even know what I'm being taught.
Mr. Miyagi can make a karate lesson out of anything. Like, Daniel is so into Mr. Miyagi that he really doesn't see how Mr. Miyagi is teaching him or what Mr. Miyagi is trying to teach him.
Yeah.
Right now he's really into showing Jessica how to... Wait, what?
Oh, well, it starts as a conversation as to how pottery is like karate. Karatery or something, but
and then it becomes from pottery to karatery.
Yes, but enough about that. It's time for mysterious ne'er-do-wells to come in and intrude on their peaceful, not quite platonic date.
As Sean Kanan and one of the Goonies named Snake come in to tell Daniel that he needs his title. I mean, Mike Barnes is like, no.
I need your title.
So then enter the tournament and go for it.
Maybe you didn't hear me. I need your title. You don't enter, and that affects my financial future, Daniel.
So basically, they're being tough guys.
Meanwhile, Jessica's like, wait, aren't you Mike Barnes, the bad boy of karate?
No, she's not. She doesn't know anything about this world. She's too busy making pots, and more power to her.
Fair. Yeah, this has to be very confusing. As confusing as it is for Daniel to get accosted out of nowhere by a violently angry Mike Barnes.
Come on, man, right now! Come on, right now! Let's go, punk!
It must be twice as confusing for Jessica.
I know. Like, what is going on? Anyway, now Mike Barnes is telling her she can dream about him as they walk away with Daniel holding the form. And now they're trading insults as she's calling them slime balls. Yeah. Snake is explaining that Mike Barnes is usually a pretty mellow guy.
Yeah. Snake playing the Kissinger to Barnes' Nixon.
Oh, you'll pay. Don't think you won't pay.
Wow. Jessica asks Daniel if he knows those creeps, and Daniel says no, and he wants to keep it that way.
And keep it that way he does, because cut to the next day at Miyagi-Do. We're out in the garden, lovingly manicured and curated by Mr. Miyagi. And once again, Daniel and Miyagi are doing the very special kata that they were working on earlier out in the wilderness when intrudes another person out of nowhere, but this time it's Terry Silver wearing a much more understated outfit than he usually does. He's just got a nice jeans and a members only jacket. This is his weird community theater version of himself.
He's explaining that his sensei is Kim Sung-Jun from South Korea, and his teacher sends his respects.
John Kreese of the Cobra Kai Dojo was our school's #1 student.
He's come all the way from Korea to apologize for Cobra Kai, and apparently there's a whole martial arts movie happening in Terry's backstory. Then he explains that John Kreese saved his life in Vietnam. He came here to help, but he was too late because Kreese died. The doctor said it was cardiac arrest after he lost all his students. That was just a picture from life's other side.
He died of a broken heart.
Terry says that, John saved his life in Vietnam, but war does something to a man. And of course he uses this to appeal to Mr. Miyagi because Mr. Miyagi says he does know that war does something to a man. And Terry, as if, given a message from God, knows that Mr. Miyagi was from the 442nd. Yeah, Terry's all mock reverential in a way that is kind of like Robbie in the beginning of his exchanges with Daniel.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then, of course, Robbie becomes sincere. Terry Silver is in no danger of sincerity at this time.
Never has, never will be.
Never indeed. Anyway, Terry apologizes and says sorry to interrupt their training. And as he walks off, Mr. Miyagi says he's sorry about his friend. And then tells Daniel, let's continue our kata. Man, Terry's really doing a good job looking like he's actually sorry, except he's got a sadistic smile like I pulled one over on him as he walks away.
Terry is practically a cartoon character.
That's the thing. This movie is like normal Miyagi-verse with Toontown characters. Toontown villains dropped in.
Cut to that evening, we're back at Mr. Miyagi's little trees, and Jessica's coming into the bonsai store while Daniel's washing his hands. She wants to know if he's eaten yet because it's time for another platonic date.
She's been stuck with this bag of macaroni and cheese.
Macaroni and cheese?
Because her aunt was tied up. Her aunt owns the shop. Daniel is into this macaroni.
Hey, listen, I never say no when it comes to macaroni and cheese.
Oh, yeah, Daniel's way into this macaroni. On a scale of 1 to 10, Daniel says he'd give it an 11.
Because like the Big Bopper.
You make me feel real loose like a long-necked goose, like a girl.
Hey, you know what I like.
What's that, baby?
Is it because the macaroni's that good, or is it because Daniel's so basic?
Wait, this is not just about macaroni, though. This is also about a badass-looking pottery bowl.
That's true. Jessica has the bonsai bowls here to demo for Daniel. And,
Exactly.
And like a good episode of Dragon's Den, Daniel's into it.
Yeah, Daniel also has tickets for Jessica to go to a dance club. It's great with live music. When has Daniel been going out to clubs? He's barely of age in any sense.
Maybe he'd pick up a taste for it in Okinawa.
Yeah, okay. Maybe so. Maybe so. Anyway, they were
But
just rejoicing.
enough of that.
But enough of that because Snake and Mike Barnes and that other guy have come back.
Ah, that other guy, the most evil one of them all.
And of course, Snake is calling Daniel Danny. If someone's calling Daniel Danny, we know that they do not have Daniel LaRusso's best interest at heart. And Mike Barnes is mad that Daniel has not yet signed this application. And now they're going to wreck the place, basically.
Yeah.
Dennis is the other dude, and Dennis is prepared to destroy one of Mr. Miyagi's screens.
D stands for Dennis. D also stands for destroy.
Exactly. Meanwhile, Mike Barnes is... I don't know what he's going to do, but it's not going to be good. Daniel's getting in the first scrap with this guy. Snake is egging him on. Daniel's kicking him, throwing him, and using some of that Okinawan street fighting. Now Snake's getting involved, and Jessica bashes him in the stomach. Was that with her pottery bowl? But Mike Barnes kicks Jessica in the stomach, which for Daniel is the,
That's
the
a
final
field too
straw.
far for anybody.
That's right. So Daniel's here to fight Mike Barnes, and Mike Barnes fights back. Mike Barnes has serious aggro karate. It's like he propels himself forward from his own knees. And then he drags Daniel up. Daniel fights back, but of course Mike Barnes has a pretty iron grip. Mike Barnes is just sort of in extreme training mode. He's telling Daniel he needs to sign it and get it over with. And Daniel's continuing to fight, but of course, more sucker punches, more threats.
Nothing doing. Mike Barnes is a real T-1000 when it comes to karate.
And then, as usual, Mr. Miyagi shows up, kicks the shit out of Snake, and also can take Mike Barnes.
Yeah, Miyagi's Barnes, and the three scatter out into a red Mustang waiting on the curb, no doubt supplied by Mr. Silver.
There are so many villains driving red cars in this show.
Yeah, and
in this Miyagi-verse.
And Snake does some donuts while Mike Barnes yells threats at them out the back of the convertible.
Disappear behind an Amtrak train.
Man, it's a real scene out here in these streets.
On the drive home, Mr. Miyagi actually appears to be in a good mood. Like he's singing.
Well, of course, he just kicked Mike Barnes' ass. He's the bad
Mike
boy of karate.
Had a crazy endorphin rush.
Exactly.
Holy crap. Mr. Miyagi for All Valley champ. Daniel cannot believe Mr. Miyagi's singing. Daniel is so high on his own moral outrage. And I get it. I mean, it sucks. But Daniel, Mr. Miyagi's telling him to feel lucky. And Mr. Miyagi says, you can feel lucky because the bonsai tree is not, in the shop. They're safe at home. And Mr. Miyagi is saying they can rebuild the shop, right? So for Mr. Miyagi, the wealth is in the trees, right? The thing that really matters isn't the storefront, but they can start over again after they sell a few trees. How much do you think these trees go for?
I don't know. There may be money in the banana stand, but
but it wasn't.
Apparently, there's even more money in these bonsai trees.
Bonsai.
Daniel's not having it, though. He says,
You know, this is the 80s. You gotta do something, Mr. Miyagi.
What is going on with the 80s, man?
man, if Daniel didn't want to be passive in the 80s, I can't imagine how he feels about 2020.
Meanwhile, Daniel glowers as they pull up at Mr. Miyagi's house. And as they pull in, they make a devastating discovery. All of the trees are gone.
Apparently, Barnes was the distraction while Silver and company came to rob Mr. Miyagi of all Mr. Miyagi's titular little trees.
But Mr. Miyagi, rather than stand there and stomp his foot, is going to go get his fishing rod. Daniel is, of course, yelling and angry because they're flat broke, and all Mr. Miyagi wants to do is go fishing. And Daniel does not understand that Mr. Miyagi has perspective. Mr. Miyagi is going to go catch them some dinner.
Can't be so damn passive.
Daniel sees that as far too passive.
Somebody's got to do something about it.
So he's getting in the banana boat. And he's going to the police to report it.
Well, good luck, Daniel. Again, it seems like Mr. Miyagi's being too passive, but if you think that, you clearly haven't been paying attention for the last two movies, because Mr. Miyagi's plans are always cryptic. He's always got some other ulterior motive. I'm sure he was going to go catch a bunch of fish and do a bunch of other things.
Meanwhile, back at the Devil's Cauldron,
we are out here, and this time we brought action girl Jessica Andrews with us.
Thank goodness she knows her way around ropes in a harness.
And the hills.
And
Wait
also
a minute.
rock climbing.
Jessica Andrews? Julie Andrews? Whoa. We're out here.
Mary Poppins, Teen Witch.
It's the crossover event of
the
summer.
season.
Yes.
Exactly. And you can tell that the guy directing this trilogy is a very good director of photography in his own right, because they have set this up so beautifully with Daniel and Jessica walking down the hill.
We got a nice silhouette of the tree line against the stark, horizon line of the ocean. Now that we can get out here in the nice national park, we're getting really fancy with the photography out here.
Exactly.
Not unlike the beach in the first movie or some of the Okinawa scenes in the second movie. But yeah, they're scouting out the titular Devil's Cauldron and
looking at how dangerous it is, right? Because at a high tide, the water comes in and then basically floods the basin.
And we cut to a model shot of the mythical Miyagi-Do bonsai, looking exactly like it does in Mr. Miyagi's logo for Miyagi-Do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just kind of sitting on the edge of the cliff with butterflies perched around it. It's
almost like it shouldn't be moved.
Yeah. Exactly. It's almost like somebody shouldn't fuck with it, Daniel.
I know. Jessica really does not understand why Daniel has not told Mr. Miyagi that he's going to go get his special tree. But Daniel says,
Well, I checked around and I found out these original bonsai trees, they start at $10,000.
No way, seriously?
No, see, that's why it's so important to me.
We have to get a tree. Mr. Miyagi's mythical bonsai will be perfect because apparently it's worth a lot of money.
The money for this tree would set Mr. Miyagi up for life. And really, that's all you need in the 80s, right? Money.
Fortunately, we've established that Jessica handily knows how to do rock climbing, so we start rappelling down the mountain. Daniel's not doing so hot. Slipping almost immediately.
Well, it's no good that she's giving him lessons on the hardest thing ever as they're going down.
But the way they shot it here on this soundstage makes it look not unlike Batman 66 when Batman and Robin would be climbing up the side of the building and a guest star would pop his head out.
It should be good practice if something ever takes us to Mount Everest, Batman.
Hey! Batman and Robin! What are you guys doing?
Pursuit of justice allows us few diversions.
So yeah, now that they've just now gotten their balance, and Jessica's making sure that Daniel's okay, looking around, admiring or appreciating the fact that it's super duper steep. She's never been this high up before. This is a real mistake. And now Daniel's freaking out, because he says he does not have a choice, which is, of course, bananas. Everybody has a choice. And no one told Daniel to do this.
We can get into the weeds with this later, but yeah, Daniel seems like every choice Daniel makes in this movie seems like he is being coerced when really he doesn't have to do anything to get through this movie. And yet he chooses to keep pressing forward anyway in spite of himself.
This movie is all about a guy says he wants a thing. The girl's like, all right, I guess I'll help you get this thing, even though I think it's kind of weird.
Yeah, even though I just met you and I just happen to have the skill you need to do this thing, we'll do it anyway.
Daniel's like talking about the Spider-Man could come down, and obviously Spider-Man is very strongly influential in the Miyagi-verse.
And with Daniel's great responsibility, they have to muster the great power to do this.
So yeah, Daniel's explaining that Mr. Miyagi brought this tree all the way back from Okinawa, and Jessica's like,
what if he tells you to put it back? I mean, what do you... No, seriously, what if he does?
No, he's not going to tell me to put it back.
Oh, he will. Even though Daniel insists he's not going to tell me to put it back.
Yeah, because believe me, Daniel says...
I mean, I know this guy. That bonsai shop was his dream come true.
Jessica, ever the voice of reason, says...
I just still don't think we should be doing this.
Yeah, well, I saw his face when he lost his job. Believe me, I know what I'm doing.
Daniel's just certain the tree's going to be fine. Just to pack the roots well. Daniel's aware that a strong root matters, right? And that becomes a root metaphor for Cobra Kai. No pun intended. Anyway, they are about to pack the bonsai tree, and when Jessica screams and falls, and the bonsai tree, which they had, I thought, or they had planned to affix to a rope, has now fallen into the salt water.
Daniel, what are we doing? It's amateur hour out here at Devil's Cauldron. Quickly, the pair rappel down to the absolute bottom of the cauldron, which is where there's an inlet to the sea, and the tide is rushing in, and the bonsai tree is taking a little bath down here in the salt
water bath.
It's no bueno for a little bonsai tree.
Luckily, Jessica has a canteen because she's an actual outdoors person, and she's washing off the roots. Daniel's putting it in a plastic bag, packing it in. It's funny that it didn't take any dirt with it, isn't it?
It fell root ball and all down into the water. Unfortunately, at that moment, they look up to see that their ropes are slowly climbing away by themselves, and oh gosh, who's this? At the top of the cliff, it's Snake and Dennis, and of course, the bad boy of karate himself,
The challenger,
Mike Barnes.
And you can dream about me.
Karate's bad boy, Mike Barnes.
That also explains why we've had this upswelling of Spielberg-like music happening right now.
Now Daniel and Jessica and Mike are in this very awkward argument to where Mike Barnes is like,
It's over, Anakin! I have the high ground!
I hope you brought a life raft. Daniel is not sure how they're going to get out of here without rope, because without rope, they're dead. And Daniel is screaming,
Smiling man, you're going to be dead meat!
Which is sort of like a Johnny Lawrence thing to say. They're talking about who's laughing then. Daniel's making all these threats about them being dead meat and signing the form. So there, he signed it. And of course, the bullies up top are laughing.
Well, it's an odd threat, right? Because what Mike has done is, like, he sent Daniel had the form, and Mike insists that he won't lower the rope for Daniel unless he signs the form, but Daniel still has the form when they lower the rope. It's a very strange situation.
It's also interesting that they're creating so much suspense around the ropes themselves. Like, this is clearly when rock climbing was becoming mainstream as a thing, and this was a very
it's like Mike
unfamiliar technology or something.
Well, I mean, the whole idea of the threat is strange because it's like Mike has a metaphorical gun to Daniel's head, but Daniel has the metaphorical bullets. Like, it's like,
yeah,
they need to both cooperate for this threat to work, and then Mike has to rescue Daniel and Jessica by pulling them up the cliff on the ropes, but Mike won't completely pull them all the way up unless Daniel hands over the form first.
Yeah, but then Mike threatens Jessica.
Yeah, they let Jessica slip. Yeah, it's a wild scene out here at Devil's Cauldron.
Daniel gives them the application, and Barnes has Snake check it out. You know, Snake is
to make
real
sure
pleased
that Daniel didn't just sign it with an X.
Don't even think about backing out, man, because then I'll really be pissed.
I'm waiting for that whole meme to start telling us that Snake is the real Karate Kid. I haven't quite gotten there yet, but
yeah, where the Snake was right.
The reboot is young, so you know. Anyway, now they're toying with Daniel and Jessica a little bit, talking about not pulling him up. And Snake is threatening and saying the stakes went up, and I think he's wanting them to give him the treat and loosening Jessica's rope again. I'm not quite sure what this is about, except being mean.
Exactly.
As they say in The Princess Bride, they're doing it for the pain.
Indeed. How funny would it be in season 3 when Johnny is in jail if Snake is like his cellmate. That's the kind of cameo I would expect to see.
Snake is clearly the precursor to Brooks, the skinny dips and bong rips guy from season 1 of Cobra Kai.
Definitely Brooks' dad.
Yeah,
for sure.
He's Brooks' pair.
Yeah.
But Mike Barnes is looking at the tree, breaks it in half, and with it he breaks Daniel's spirit. As Ralph Macchio looks down, knowing that he's just broken Mr. Miyagi's heart. So it's raining now. Or something.
Well, they have to make it nice and cinematic when Daniel bursts into Mr. Miyagi's little trees with the broken bonsai tree.
Once again, Pat Morita with total reality effect, right? As soon as Pat Morita sees the tree and gets really upset, I 100% believe that this is real. That's the thing about this show, right? Like, it has real people in it, even though they're in a completely unreal situation. And Mr. Miyagi is going to rinse the roots, and Daniel will not stop blubbering, talking about how he should have listened. And
I didn't want it to be my fault that your dream didn't come true.
How can someone take care of something better than when you left it?
Maybe even better kid than himself,
Begging for forgiveness, like Daniel, Mr. Miyagi says he forgives Daniel, but Mr. Miyagi is busy actually solving the problem while Daniel is just fretting constantly.
Miyagi forgive you.
And Mr. Miyagi says,
If root strong, trees survive.
And another guy is here to deliver bonsai trees, which of course Mr. Miyagi got.
Yeah, where do you want these bonsai trees?
Yeah, Mr. Miyagi reveals that while Daniel was out puttering around at Devil's Cauldron with Jessica, Mr. Miyagi was actually doing something productive. He wasn't just going to fish. He was probably taking one last fishing trip with his truck before he sold it to buy a whole new set of bonsai trees for the shop.
Bonsai. Exactly. And now Daniel, of course, is angry and banging stuff, saying, why is he so stupid?
Damn it, why am I so stupid?
No worry, Daniel, sir. Everything work out. Everything okay now.
Sometimes I wonder if Mr. Miyagi's like, how did I wind up with this kid?
It is definitely a question how he wound up with the Karate Kid 3 version of Daniel. This Daniel is definitely falling back on some bad patterns, like he's self-loathing and he's just kind of downward spiraling this entire act.
Yeah, he's explained that he made this decision on the spot to sign to go do the tournament because he was at risk. And Mr. Miyagi's just like, I understand, because Mr. Miyagi has no freaking time. He's going to fix this tree. As Daniel just keeps talking, Daniel's like, I don't stand a chance against this guy unless you train me. And Mr. Miyagi says he understands, but he will not train Daniel for this thing.
Since there was no direct, sustained bullying threat to Daniel, this Mike Barnes kid isn't like Johnny. He isn't like a existential threat to Daniel in the same way that Johnny was. Mike Barnes has just come out of nowhere, it seems.
Well, Mike Barnes is actually kind of an existential threat, but what's happening is that Daniel doesn't even know. I mean, I'm in some ways sort of retconning this to make it make more sense, but I think it's true that Daniel has not really communicated effectively to Mr. Miyagi that these guys are threatening him. Like, he doesn't want to worry Mr. Miyagi. He doesn't want to admit his own weakness, whatever, but he's not having that conversation with Mr. Miyagi, and he's all framing it in terms of ego, which for Mr. Miyagi is a non-starter. But right now, Daniel's running in the park with Jessica.
Right. Jessica and Daniel decide to get in some quick cardio,
some quick foggy park runs, when here comes Terry Silver in his baby blue beach buggy.
This is the poor person's car that Terry was fretting about at the beginning of the movie, and it turns out to have done the job because as he drives up to Daniel, completely apropos of nothing, he's just like, oh, hey, Daniel, I just happened to be driving by while you were doing your cardio, and, I heard that this Mike Barnes is some real hot shit, and you should probably keep your head on a swivel for this guy.
Because of all the sweep techniques that I know about and you don't, basically.
Yeah. But he's like, yeah, I'm sure Mr. Miyagi's got your back, even though I secretly know he doesn't. So
he offers Daniel a book of karate techniques, which is ironic, given that Daniel was learning from karate from a book when he met Mr. Miyagi. But anyway, they head off and run.
I mean, much to Terry's credit, he is playing it slow here. He's set up this trap for Daniel, such as the next day when Daniel's out training by himself at Miyagi-Do, and Barnes comes bursting into the yard again, seemingly out of nowhere.
And Mike Barnes is dressed like a 50s villain.
Yeah, he's dressed not unlike Chosen in Chosen's street clothes from part 2.
Meanwhile, Mike Barnes throws Daniel to the ground when here comes Terry Silver dressed in white, looking vaguely heroic.
Yeah, Terry wisely having decided to come in from the side gate, even though it's clear that they probably rode there together.
Exactly.
Let him up, punk.
He's picking Barnes off Daniel. And he's got the book there that he's ostensibly there to give Daniel.
Yeah, these two are doing a real one-act play in front of Daniel.
And Daniel's
playing it up big.
Daniel's, falling for it hook, line, and sinker.
I ever see you even on the same street as this kid. You understand? You understand? Yes! All right.
Daniel's like, I was hoping you'd really kick Barnes' ass, and Terry's like, oh, karate's not about that. It's about me getting slow revenge on you over the course of a summer.
Until your knuckles bleed.
Yeah. Terry decides to, or at least this version of Terry decides to befriend Daniel and show him a trick or two.
Well, there's only so much you can learn from a book, right?
That's right. We're gonna learn some sweeps as Terry set up earlier.
Let me show you a couple of moves. Help you deal with punks like that.
But yeah, they're doing the thing, and of course he lets Daniel knock him down, and Terry's like, basically that's a strong move because everyone needs a teacher, Daniel.
Yeah.
And then he tells Daniel he's opening the Cobra Kai dojo again to set things straight. And he's there for Daniel, no strings attached.
Terry doesn't want to be Daniel's teacher.
You're gonna be my karate teacher?
No. I'm gonna be your sensei.
So he's heading off. Daniel didn't immediately say yes, right? Daniel's skeptical of Cobra Kai because, hey, Daniel, you have a good reason to be.
That's right, yeah. Yeah.
I really wish I'd been in the production meeting when they're like, what are we going to name this villain? Terry
Richmond?
Terry Jenkins.
Terry Gold Guy?
Yeah.
Terry Platinum.
Terry Warbucks.
The next day, Daniel comes zooming up to Mr. Miyagi's little trees in the banana boat. He's super excited because Terry was showing him some sweeps yesterday, and he doesn't want Mr. Miyagi's training necessarily. He just wants to see how to do some sweeps, and Mr. Miyagi.
And then Daniel's
begging,
gets on me, please. Like Daniel, he just can't stop talking.
I just want to ask you, do you know how to sweep?
Of course.
Would you mind showing me how? I mean, I'm not asking you to train me. I don't want you to train me. Just this one thing. Just one thing. I'd be so appreciative. All you have to do is this one thing. You got to do. I mean, I'm not asking you to train me. I don't want you to train me. All you have to do is this one thing. Be a pal.
Yeah.
He can't let it go.
And then Mr. Miyagi's like, okay, I'll teach you how to do some sweeps. Wait right here. And Daniel's all effusive, and he's talking to Jessica about his new friend Terry, when Mr. Miyagi decides to do bits on Daniel, and he comes out with a broom, and he's like, here's how you sweep.
Vanessa, you hold like this. First, left, right.
It's no joke, all right?
This is kind of a Dennis the Menace dynamic, but where Mr. Wilson is the actual menace.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Daniel doesn't appreciate having bits done to him, so he hops back in the banana boat and races away, leaving Miyagi and Jessica to look kind of a little bit forlorn.
It's okay, man. They went inside of Mr. Miyagi, trained her in karate. Like, we just don't see it because this is the wrong movie, but...
That's true.
Indeed.
That evening at Cobra Kai, the OG Cobra Kai, we see Terry training in front of the mirror.
Oh, look, there's a little black cloth draped over John Kreese's picture. That's a nice touch.
Say what you will about Terry, he sets up an elaborate piece of stagecraft in this little deception. So yeah, now, they're really trying to sell Daniel on the idea that Kreese is dead, Terry's here, Terry's nice, Barnes is mean, and Terry will help Daniel defeat Barnes.
He's just getting the rust off, he says, after doing all these crazy karate moves. Daniel's here to take him up on it. And Terry is saying it's an honor. It would be an honor to train Daniel. How does Mr. Miyagi feel about it? And, of course, Daniel reveals that Mr. Miyagi is not involved. He doesn't need to know.
That's right.
Terry the first of his many victories, he thinks, because he's driven a wedge between Daniel and Mr. Miyagi. Wow, now I just can't unsee the fact that Terry Silver really reminds me of Robbie.
Absolutely. This is exactly where I want to be.
But anyway, we see Daniel in his Cobra Kai gi, because Terry just happened to have an extra one lying around. He's going to teach him the 3 Ds: desire, devotion, and discipline. He can give him the
Dennis
third one.
And destruction.
Okay, now he's calling Daniel Mr. LaRusso because we are truly at Cobra Kai and everyone is their last name.
Yeah, now we're going to do the things the Cobra Kai way, which is the sir, yes, sirs, and the, yes, senseis, and all that stuff. Terry has this plan worked out to the last. And we learn the first rule of Quicksilver, which is if a man can't stand, he can't fight.
He has Daniel repeat that, then shows him a dummy made of plywood and pipe material, and he wants him to sweep the 2x4s as legs.
Terry has this dummy that looks like Simone Gertz made it.
I'm going to build an animatronic robot version of myself.
So it's interesting because he's got Daniel moving, and he's prowling behind Daniel kind of like a big cat. And he's mocking Daniel for saying the word ow when Daniel hurts himself. And Daniel is no longer talking at length. He's just saying this is extreme. And Terry tells him extreme situations require extreme measures. Terry wails on that wooden dummy, beats the crap out of it. And Daniel looks both impressed and terrified at the same time.
Yeah, Simone Gertz is going to have to completely rebuild that dummy in her next YouTube video.
And they're going to watch it, and they're going to be like, wow, Simone, like, you're smart and cool.
But
Terry tells Daniel that come back tomorrow and they'll start again. This too could be you, Daniel LaRusso.
Silver gives Daniel the business, and Daniel thanks him for the privilege.
Indeed. Welcome to The Karate Kid Part 3.
A little while later at Miyagi-Do, Daniel comes limping home, bruised and blistered. Miyagi obviously notices immediately.
Yeah, Mr. Miyagi misses nothing, but Daniel, of course, thinks that he's fooling everyone. Heads into Mr. Miyagi's room.
Yeah, you'd think Miyagi would be a little bit upset that Daniel isn't at work, them being business partners.
Mr. Miyagi just looks sad at what's happening to Daniel, and then, of course, we see Daniel in his room taking off his sock to find a badly bruised foot, and Mr. Miyagi's knocking on the door. Daniel is trying to hide it. Daniel, I see, has saved Mr. Miyagi's charcoal drawing and put it on the wall right next to his trophy, right? So Daniel's following the dream and pretends to be doing sit-ups when Mr. Miyagi walks in with a bowl and a tea kettle, so he's going to treat Daniel's foot, which Daniel's trying to pretend doesn't have anything wrong with it. But Mr. Miyagi knows all.
Mr. Miyagi knows better. Mr. Miyagi knows something that Daniel should have known, which is doing sit-ups in bed is no good.
Yeah,
like, it's all squishy and you get all hot and sweaty in bed. Who needs that?
Yeah, I don't know. I've never tried it.
Here we go. So this is kind of a callback to the previous Karate Kid movie, specifically Karate Kid 1, and Miyagi has like a kind of a foot powder mix that looks like vinegar and baking soda volcano when he mixes it together. But again, it's one of Mr. Miyagi's patented Miyagi treatments. You know what? I feel like Mr. Miyagi would probably get a lot further if he marketed some of his home remedies rather than had a bonsai tree store.
Why not do both?
True.
I mean, look at Rose Apothecary.
Okay, you know what? I don't care, so you can do whatever you'd like.
So, meanwhile, Mr. Miyagi's talking to Daniel about stuff, but Daniel's busy tomorrow, and Mr. Miyagi makes a face because he knows that Daniel's lying, so he just walks off as Daniel continues to try and dream up his excuses. Mr. Miyagi just walks out, closes the door, and then Daniel, mumbling his excuses, notices that Mr. Miyagi's already walking away.
Yeah, Miyagi's not having it. All Daniel can do is continue the backslide, which leads us to the next scene over in Mr. Miyagi's own room.
Yeah, Mr. Miyagi is at his shrine.
Well, he's doing his meditation,
Well, that's true, he's meditating. And then he looks at a picture of Daniel. Because another thing about Cobra Kai is that in times of trouble, the good guys look at pictures of the guys that they're worried about disappointing, or that they're disappointed in, and says,
Hope confusion in the soul, Daniel-san. Miyagi heart empty without you.
It's a very sweet scene as Miyagi ruminates over this picture of Daniel from Karate Kid 2, but it's also kind of awkward because Miyagi-Do is a traditional Japanese house and the walls are made of paper, so you would think Daniel would have heard all that.
That's true, but his room is an add-on.
Oh, fair.
So Terry, back at the dojo, Terry is admiring the fact that Daniel's foot is already healed. He's a fast healer. Little does Terry know that Daniel has some secret foot powder going on. And he's talking, he has Daniel explain what he does. Daniel says kata, and of course Terry immediately dismisses kata, moves on to the Quicksilver method of rule number 2. A man can't breathe, he can't fight.
That's true. If a man can't stand, he can't fight. If he can't breathe, he can't fight.
We've heard these rules before because Johnny Lawrence also knows these rules. Now he's got Daniel with a punching bag. He's having the punching bag simulate the person Daniel's going to punch through. But no, now he's taking Daniel back to the plywood dummy, which is also somehow miraculously repaired, taped back together. I'm not clear.
Oh, you just replace the boards. It's easy.
Indeed. So he's got Daniel. Daniel, of course, wants to know, why do I have to do it with this thing? And Terry's like, because it's part of the training.
I like the little work glove hands on the dummy.
I like the way that they don't have a visible camera, despite having a room that is ostensibly full of mirrors.
Oh, no, yeah, they do a great job with this. Like, it really feels like a huge space, partly because of those mirrors.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, Terry's slowly giving him the hard sell now, saying, wake up and smell the coffee. He flips the plywood head around on the Simone Garrett's dummy, and there is a picture of karate's bad boy, Mike Barnes.
And you can dream about me.
Karate's bad boy, Mike Barnes.
You know, Terry's telling Daniel, if you want to get beaten, blah, 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 you know, that's fine, and walks away, and then, like, lingers there on the inside of the hallway waiting for Daniel to apologize or start without him. And, of course, Daniel submits and begins punching the dummy that has Mike Barnes' face on it. And, of course, this has a parallel now in Cobra Kai Season 1 when Johnny persuades Miguel to pour all of his anger into hitting a dummy that Miguel comes to associate with Tyler and the other bullies at school, right?
Well, I mean, specifically in this scene, Terry kind of lampshades the famous crane kit from Karate Kid Part 1 and tells Daniel that he's wasting his time if Daniel doesn't toughen up and beat the hell out of karate's bad boy.
Also
Mike
in that
Barnes.
scene, Terry has a nice little villain laugh to himself, like a whoa, while standing in the hallway listening to Daniel begin to beat the plywood dummy. Meanwhile, back at Mr. Miyagi's house, Daniel is reaching in the drawer for Mr. Miyagi's secret foot powder when he thinks Mr. Miyagi is asleep. Of course, Mr. Miyagi, who makes no tricks, is not asleep at all because he's known all along that Daniel was back.
Yeah, of course Mr. Miyagi knows what's happening. It's not like it's any secret. Once again, the walls are made of paper. You know, in the very next scene, Daniel, now addicted to Miyagi brand foot powder, is soaking his elbow when Mr. Miyagi comes in to confront Daniel about his extreme solutions to his extreme problems.
Daniel is reading a grimoire, a curse book. It came from Terry Silver, so anything is possible. Now he's trying to hide it from Mr. Miyagi because he's been soaking his arm. He's sliding it into a drawer. Please don't get that nice wooden bed wet with foot powder water. And Daniel's saying extreme situations require extreme measures, and Mr. Miyagi's like, it doesn't sound like you saying these things. And of course, Daniel's now angry at Mr. Miyagi and yelling at him in tons of attitude when Mr. Miyagi's reaching out to him, and Daniel's like, if you won't be part of the solution, don't give me a hard time. And then slams the door shut in Mr. Miyagi's face because, like the ways of the Sith, Cobra Kai is taking over Daniel's soul.
Good, Anakin, good.
And sadly, you know, Pat Morita tears up. Mr. Miyagi is really heartbroken about this, and damn it, if it's once again Pat Morita's abilities sell this whole scene, right?
They really do.
But enough of that. We got to get back over to Cobra Kai for the next part of the Quicksilver method. And what part of the Quicksilver method are we learning today?
I don't know. Daniel was actually trying to do kata, but Terry immediately dismissed it and has Daniel apologize and brings him back over to the punching bag and the dummy so that Daniel can learn to do some real damage with rule number 3, which is a man can't see, he can't fight.
That's right. So yeah, if a man can't stand, he can't fight. If he can't breathe, he can't fight. If he can't see, he can't fight. If he can't do his taxes, he can't fight. If he can't drive a car, he can't fight.
If he can't wear a chicken suit at Halloween, he can't fight.
He's wild. The guy's using real legs.
It's all in the Quicksilver method.
Indeed.
Find it wherever fine karate books are sold.
Exactly. So Terry is showing Daniel on the big punching bag and having him give it a shot so that he causes his eyes to fill up with blood, or he's choking on his own blood. There's blood. Anyway, there will be blood because Daniel is now hitting the dummy, as Terry tells him to do, going straight for the head, punching karate's bad boy Mike Barnes in the face, and thus ramming his knuckles through the plywood. And his knuckles, they're bleeding. Oh yes, there's blood. Terry has made Daniel's knuckles bleed, and Terry is looking with great pleasure at the blood on Daniel's knuckles, telling Daniel, so what, it's blood.
Yeah, Terry goes on to say that he wants Barnes to be blinded by his own tears and to choke on his own blood. Gross, Terry.
Yeah, well, Daniel's ready to choke on his own blood himself, because Terry's getting himself to the point where he will abuse the dummy. He will abuse himself just to look like he did the dummy. And Terry's getting Daniel just amped up to go cause some serious destruction. But now we're cutting to that nightclub where Daniel is going to take Jessica for her going away, right? Coming down the stairs, and Daniel is telling Jessica how great it is with his new pal Terry. He's teaching stuff that he could never do. And Jessica seems to remember that Daniel used to talk that way about Mr. Miyagi. But no, instead it's time to rock and roll because we had such a good time hanging out in the 50s in Okinawa. Now we should really do some more. There's a guy who looks suspiciously like Joel Osteen, kind of roughing up his girlfriend in the corner, and Terry Silver walks over and offers him some money to do a dastardly deed. But Daniel doesn't notice that Terry's there yet. He's just there dancing with Jessica in the middle of the floor while the band plays.
We're listening to High Wire now. Not nearly as it's no Bananarama, I'll say that.
Yeah, no. I mean, whatever, we'll take it. But so they're dancing. Terry Silver walks up. Daniel says, "What are you doing here?" And Terry's like, "You told me you'd be here." Meanwhile, the Joel Osteen guy comes up to Jessica and puts his hands on her, and Daniel's like, "No way," cuts in, and then the guy pushes Daniel, and so then Daniel punches him.
What are you doing?
The guy falls down, and of course, as any woman who's in a Karate Kid movie would say,
God, what is wrong with you? What are you, nuts?
to Daniel, Jessica says, running away.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, the guy that Daniel punched says he broke his nose, is dragged away by security. And Daniel tells Terry, "We got to get out of here," gets him out of there. And Terry is, of course, thrilled. Because
Oh, man, that was beautiful. You didn't even think.
Well, Terry has seemingly lured Daniel into this one-man production of Our Town that he's doing in his own head.
Why is this happening? Like, what is the point of this in Terry's, pushing Daniel toward evil? Because Terry's, again, got this look on his face like it's all part of my evil plan. But back at Jessica's apartment, Daniel's knocking on the door. And she opens it. He's there, of course, to apologize. Oh, he's got blood all over his shirt, too. That's neat.
Yeah, Daniel should not have worn a white shirt to a beat-em-up club, but, that's, rookie mistake. Daniel arrives at Casa de Jessica to apologize to her, but she's busy packing because, again, she's leaving forever at the end of the movie, so, we're getting near that point. Daniel says...
Just didn't want you leaving, thinking that was me.
Jessica says...
And who was it? Conan the Barbarian?
Let me tell you of the days of Conan.
Yeah, he says he feels like he's losing control of everything, and Jessica replies...
Yeah, the only thing I see you losing control of is your temper.
PolitiFact equals true on that one as well.
And Daniel's going back and forth and talking about how Mr. Miyagi's probably written him off, and he doesn't know what the hell he's going to do, and Jessica's just sort of trying to pack to go to Ohio, like, what is this guy doing on my daybed? But then she decides to take pity on him and sit down next to him and talk to him a little bit about it. She says, "No one's written you off." That's because she's been the secret Karate Kid and the whole time Daniel was away. Anyway, she explains that Mr. Miyagi loves Daniel and has faith in him because he told her that. Daniel is really addicted to his own self-loathing. This is a problem.
Mr. Miyagi, he loves you. He has faith in you. He told me.
Daniel, much like a Frankenstein, has become horrified at what he has become and has run off into the night to confess to Jessica.
Fire, no good. No, bad.
But of course, she gives him a kiss on the cheek and tells him,
"You'll do fine. You just got to do it."
And that's it for Jessica Andrews.
Yeah, that's a production wrap on Jessica Andrews.
She did a good job bringing the reality effect to the show, which otherwise made no sense. And also, setting a tradition for Amanda LaRusso to follow, calling out the fact that a lot of Daniel's ideas are bullshit. But it's okay, because she asked Daniel to send her a Christmas card, and he says he will. And I have no doubt that he does. I bet she even gets, LaRusso auto gift cards.
Oh, for sure.
To this day.
For sure.
Anyway, he sticks his head back in and thanks her. And there he is, the sweet Daniel LaRusso we all remember. He just has to come into his own.
Exactly.
But he's already freaking out again back at Mr. Miyagi's house.
I'm the guy who broke his nose. I just need to talk to him. I need to tell him that I'm sorry. I gotta tell him that I want to...
Daniel, again, trying to get the narrative of his life under control. We're back at Mr. Miyagi's little trees where he's on the phone feverishly trying to apologize to guy who Terry paid to get his face punched in.
Yeah, he's angry that he can't get the guy's name because he's just certain he's in the hospital or what have you. And Mr. Miyagi is there. Daniel's, going back and forth, just ranting and raving about how his sweatshirt's got the guy's blood on him because everything Mr. Miyagi taught him, he did the opposite. Daniel is like all these dudes who get in trouble in the media and then write long self-flagellating apologies because they think the self-flagellation is what shows their growth rather than actually saying I'm sorry and changing their behavior.
And it's my fault. It's all my fault. I did it myself.
Like, Daniel is so into his shame at this time. And as I'll argue during our analysis, this gives the Cobra Kai showrunners just tons of material to work with. But, Mr. Miyagi is taking it all in stride because Daniel's back. And, Mr. Miyagi's got perspective. Part of the reason is because his very cool gardener's tape has helped to repair the bonsai tree.
Bonsai.
That's right. The official Miyagi-Do bonsai tree is back in business after some TLC from Mr. Miyagi.
Because it has a strong root. Now, I just want to point out that this tree from the old country that is regenerated, restoring the hope of a family, Robert Mark Kamen used that again to great effect when writing and co-writing A Walk in the Clouds with Keanu Reeves.
Oh, that's right.
Right? He has the root that saves the whole thing. So this strong root thing, it means a lot to Mark Kamen. It's also really important in a lot of martial arts, right? The idea of the root that grounds your practice. So it's, it is also a long-running Easter egg in Cobra Kai for good reason, for good philosophical reason. But now, despite having assured Daniel that things are okay, Daniel still can't let it go. He's still so amped.
I meant well, but I just want to tell him it's over.
Did not wait for tomorrow?
Well, no, I'll feel better if I get over with now, okay?
You like Miyagi? Come help you.
No, Mr. Miyagi,
that he's going to go tell Mr. Silver now that he can't train with him anymore. And even though Mr. Miyagi offers to go with him, he doesn't.
I know. Daniel, again, as though he has no narrative control over his own life, decides that it can't wait till tomorrow. He has to go confront Terry Silver right now at Cobra Kai headquarters right now. And no good will come of this.
The door
Daniel,
doesn't say sensei anymore.
Terry's thought of every detail. So Daniel arrives back at OG Cobra Kai headquarters.
It's dark in there.
It's dark, except for some sort of activity in the back. There's some dim lights. There's some murmuring.
Silver!
There's also some construction on the mirrors and some paint rollers and
yeah,
such.
we're remodeling because apparently Terry's got a franchise, right?
Indeed. Daniel's come to tell Terry that he's thought about some things, and he's decided not to defend his title. That's heightening, right? I think Terry actually engineered this. And Daniel insincerely says, "You've been great." I mean, he hasn't been great, but Daniel does say, honestly, I know when I hit that guy, it's not me. But, being Daniel with his own personal sense of honor.
I was high on that Cobra Kai.
Wow. He figured he owed him at least that. And Terry responds that,
You owe me a lot more than that, Danny boy.
He's going to defend. And now here comes the real Terry Silver, the one that we've always known was lurking in there. Daniel, being ever Daniel, says that, you can't tell me what to do.
You can't make me do something I don't want to do.
Indeed.
Which is the thesis of this entire goddamn movie.
Exactly. It sure is. Still no visible camera and all the mirrors as Terry walks around in a circle telling Daniel, let's show you what I'm talking about. And then boom, here comes Mike Barnes.
Mike Barnes, the bad boy of karate?
The challenger, Mike Barnes!
Mike Barnes. Mr. Silver, you just bought yourself a champion. Mike Barnes.
You can dream about me.
Yeah, Mike Barnes has been there the whole time, and he's already dressed up in a gi waiting to kick the crap out of Daniel. And they're surrounding Daniel, telling him that,
Either you fight one fight on one day, or you fight every for the rest of your life.
Either fight us one-on-one or you fight us all at once. What's it going to be? Oh, and then, just as Daniel reaches the door, we get one of the biggest jump scares of the 80s. And again, this is a decade that gave us both Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street.
John Kreese jumps out with a truly frightening grimace yelling boo at Daniel.
Yeah, and so now 3-on-1 ain't no fun as Mike Barnes starts wailing on Daniel.
Daniel runs to the door, and Terry sends Mike Barnes after him, but then boom, as Kreese and Terry laugh together about Daniel peeing in his pants, There's a grunt and a scream. The door opens, and Mr. Miyagi appears. Yes?
Mr. Miyagi not only appears, but he throws Barnes through the front door.
And Mike Barnes actually looks legitimately scared. He's adjusting his black belt in some anxiety.
So now here we are in one of the biggest fights of all, which is Barnes and Kreese and Silver versus Miyagi. Miyagi immediately dispatches with Barnes, throwing him up against the light panel, which then gives the whole room kind of like this more dramatic lighting for this final fight, where we've got Kreese versus Miyagi, a fight that we wanted to see probably for about 3 movies now, right?
That's right. And the stunt people are just killing it. At least Pat Morita's stunt guy is. But he gets Kreese to the ground. And now Terry Silver is waving his hands, making noises that sound like wah, which is one of the few things I remember from the original time that I watched this movie. And Terry's egging him on, saying, let's see how good you really are. Well, Mr. Miyagi throws Terry up against the wall, and Daniel looks on as Mr. Miyagi prepares to clean house with him. Don't look too closely if you're looking at this in HD, or you will see that is not Pat Morita in some of these key scenes. Anyway, now we have Terry just sort of dancing around Mr. Miyagi, again doing some little curly cues and flourishes. Mr. Miyagi continually drops him.
It's a pretty wild scene, as Terry Silver has at least a foot of height on Pat Morita.
But Pat Morita still manages to throw him into the mirror with a paint can overhead, setting off some symbolism that would then come back to greet us in the opening episode of Cobra Kai. And Mr. Miyagi answers him with a mocking, waving his hands.
Yeah, that's. I feel like that's a little bit of the Pat Morita shining through, as he's kind of mocking Terry Silver's mocking him earlier.
Exactly.
It's a meta mocking.
It's a meta mocking that only Mr. Miyagi would be capable of, while Terry Silver screams that John Kreese is true karate, and Mr. Miyagi won't even be a memory.
I feel like that's a much bigger threat than anything that Daniel's facing, is this idea that Terry Silver's going to use his money to make Cobra Kai like the only version of karate that gets taught in the valley. Like that's a thread they could have actually followed through on in this movie and then chose not to.
Even though these two jerks are standing there laughing and still able to kick the crap out of them, they linger long enough at the shadows by the door for Daniel to ask Mr. Miyagi if he will train him, and Mr. Miyagi says yes. But it's all worth it, because then we get, again, a lovely training sequence.
That's right.
Out by the water. I think this is the last time that we ever see Daniel and Mr. Miyagi train together. And it's also a montage of the Cobra Kai's training as well, right?
Well, that's right. So this is the third Karate Kid movie, right? We now gotta up the ante here with a classic, wonderful Karate Kid montage. We've got Mr. Miyagi and Daniel out on the LA beach. They're doing these nice long shots with the birds and stuff in the background as they do their kata. But we're kind of cross-cutting with the gang back at OG Cobra Kai being just, brutal and awful with each other. So We're kind of getting a little bit of everything, right? Oh, and then the montage ends with this really sweet shot of Miyagi and Daniel in the golden hour in the background, and then they kind of crossfade, and you see the Miyagi bonsai in the foreground, and it's kind of lit in this golden light.
John Avildsen, baby.
Image. Yeah. That's what you wanted to see.
So it's really interesting to see the montage played out in this way with the opposites against each other, and the war versus peace, right? Like the fighting at Cobra Kai is very intense, while the kata that Daniel and Mr. Miyagi are doing is very meditative. And then they use that crossfade with the tree in the foreground to then fade into Devil's Cauldron again, and we have Mr. Miyagi and Daniel on their ropes together. Mr. Miyagi, of course, is old hat at the ropes course, right? Like, he's chill, they're planting the tree, they're wishing it the best, they're in sync together. Mr. Miyagi says it's a good spot, and he's somehow miraculously able to remove that. I guess it was plastic all along that it was holding the tree together.
It was a little tree band-aid.
No sign of the break at all. Daniel's giving a little canteen water, and Mr. Miyagi is saying,
Daniel, sir, this bonsai have strong root. Same you.
Oh, Mr. Miyagi, where was this movie for the last hour?
Mr. Miyagi says, the tree can choose how it's grow. You choose how you're going to grow. And that he has great faith in him. This scene is so great. Like, honestly, y'all, I need a fan cut of this film.
A fan cut of this movie would be 15 minutes long.
That's okay. That would be the best 15 minutes. But then again, Cobra Kai would have less to go on in making their plots, right? As I will say. Mr. Miyagi, however, bows to the bonsai tree and wishes it his best, and then, heads back up on the ropes. Well, Daniel, I don't know how he's adept at the ropes now, but sure.
I mean, they've practiced at least once. I guess that's enough.
I mean, yeah, at least Mr. Miyagi's not going to cut his rope. He heads up.
That's true. And again, without Barnes and company there to threaten them, which Barnes easily could have done. Like, they have had no problem following Daniel around up to this point.
Yeah, Daniel bowing to the tree in his own way. It's really sweet because it shows that for Daniel, I think the bonsai tree is the path back to his root. And Ralph Macchio does a good job looking moved and saying goodbye to the tree. Although, again, another fan theory I have is that Daniel took a cutting from that tree when he made Mr. Miyagi's grave planting.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Suddenly we are already at the All Valley Championship.
Yep. And we're back.
Yes.
For the, which one is this? This is the 42nd annual All Valley?
I don't know. Terry Silver's wearing a jacket with one of those silk scarves that makes it look like he just came in from Monte Carlo, and he and Kreese are on the sideline of one. And they're doing little fist bumps amongst themselves as Barnes continues to score. And, of course, Mr. Miyagi and Daniel don't have to do anything because Daniel's only defending.
True.
But Mike Barnes tells him,
"You're next, so I own your ass."
Of course, Mike Barnes has got the full-on Cobra Kai gi.
Mm-hmm. Pat Johnson's back as referee.
Of course he is. New guy as the announcer. Do not know who this is. Yeah.
Terry now dropping any pretense of the nice guy one-man show persona that he's been workshopping with Daniel.
He's the president of Dynatox Industries and preparing for a 2020 presidential run.
That's right. Well, he's got his nice little rich guy cravat.
And now he's pretending to be a philanthropist, saying that
If you get, you give.
I'm not sure, but he says that
For the last 20 years, I've gotten from karate. I've gotten discipline, health, self-confidence, inner peace.
Yeah, with Cobra Kai, he's got the biggest karate, he's got the best karate, he's got the most inner peace that anybody's ever had.
So much winning in this karate.
Believe me, he's the best at karate.
And so he's going to have a partnership with, the best karate man he's ever known, Sensei John Kreese, which of course has John Kreese pumping his fist and looking very pleased with himself.
Mm-hmm.
And Daniel is ranting and raving off to the side as Mr. Miyagi nods, utterly unsurprised by what is happening. And Terry announces his plans to franchise with a chain of Cobra Kai dojos where people can come learn the same values that he learned.
Honesty, compassion, and fair play.
The Quicksilver method.
He's really just saying this to upset Daniel, as well as take advantage where he can, right? I mean, that's the deal. His brand is chaos, and then he'll reap the profits because he's already got toxic waste. What more do you need?
Well, Terry Silver, he's got all the power and money in the world, so his best chance at victory is attacking his opponent's ersatz son.
Terry Silver is off to the sidelines telling Mike Barnes that he has to, gain a point then lose a point. They want to draw it out for the full 3 minutes so that he puts Daniel really in pain.
I want him to experience pain. First he suffers, then he suffers some more.
He wants Daniel to suffer, and Kreese is totally down with this. So Mike jumps into the ring. He's pumping his fist back and forth. Daniel is already greeted as a champion, and Mr. Miyagi looks on proudly. And this still looks like it's going to be a bloodbath to me.
Bloodbath indeed. This is a battle for the soul of the valley in many ways.
Once again. And you have the rules, of course, laid out that the first person to get 3 points without losing them over and over again, the first person to get 3 points and not lose them wins the thing. So, 3 points, 3 minutes. At the end of the 3 minutes, the championship match will go into dun dun dun.
Oh yeah, well there's another
sudden death overtime.
Well yeah, so there's another new convenient rule this year, which is that not only does Daniel not have to fight in the other portions of the tournament, but if there's no winner at the end of the 3 minutes, we go into sudden death overtime.
Who is making these rule changes?
I don't know. It seems like they're making them up on the fly just to make things more difficult for Daniel.
Mike Barnes is already being very aggressive, just sort of, using his legs to just completely propel Daniel off of the court, as it were. And Terry Silver throwing around ethnic slurs toward Mr. Miyagi as John Kreese laughs along. Meanwhile, Daniel successfully dodges Mike Barnes only to try and kick him and get dropped for it. And then, of course, Snake Guy runs on and tries to heckle Daniel, but Pat Johnson's got Daniel's back because he knows better. And Mike Barnes will be disqualified if he kicks Daniel in the groin again. Oh, that's going to cost him his previous point. So the score is 0-0, and it's working out very well because even though Mike Barnes looks like he's taking a loss, he's really making Terry Silver happy so he can get that 50% share in the Cobra Kai dojos.
Fair. I mean, Terry Silver's really trying to use Mike as an Ivan Drago here, right? The whole idea is,
I must break you.
It's interesting. Daniel has dodged Mike Barnes in a way that looked like Mr. Miyagi dodging Kreese by those cars, except it was much faster. Daniel sort of bobbed and weaved there a little bit. Daniel is taking a pounding, but he's still getting up for more. And even though Mike Barnes is quite sure of himself, Daniel does get the drop on him. Then they have to break. And of course, Mike Barnes hits Daniel before they're both on their lines. And so, he's courting disqualification, and that illegal punch is going to cost him a point. But again, this is all part of the plan.
Like, they're just stringing him along. The referee keeps giving Mike Barnes one more chance, despite the fact that Barnes just keeps flouting the rules. Who does that?
So they're in their fighting positions. They're ready to go. And Mike Barnes comes for Daniel, chases him off the thing. And, right into Terry Silver's waiting arms where he tells him the real pain begins. As Kreese, again, laughs along. Really, there's not much that Cove has to do here but laugh along and look delighted, which, of course, Cove is delighted to do.
Indeed. Once again, in the moments of extreme threat, people start calling Daniel Danny and Danny Boy.
Oh, my gosh. Mike Barnes just kicked the living crap out of Daniel, charged him across the floor, and Daniel's rolling around. I think it went for his lower back. So like his hip flexor or something in the, where it connects there, he's looking like he's in big trouble. No points scored though. Terry has a moment to appreciate the beauty of the situation of watching Daniel's pain. And Mike Barnes just socks Daniel repeatedly. So much that it looks more like a wrestling match as Pat Johnson tells him they have to break.
What's the matter, sweetheart? You having trouble breathing?
While all this is going on, Daniel's just getting worn down over and over again. We're not really seeing much of Mr. Miyagi here, huh?
I mean, that's Mr. Miyagi's whole style. I mean, to his credit, that is consistent with how he's been in the first two movies. He's very zen. He tends to hang back and let Daniel learn on his own, let's say.
Yeah, but
only in these moments where things get extreme does Mr. Miyagi come in just now.
So yeah, the match is ended and it's time for sudden death overtime, and Daniel's on the ground saying he's afraid and they have to go. And Mr. Miyagi says, no, you have to fight because
it's okay to lose to opponent, must not lose to fear.
And this is it. This is where Daniel admits that he's afraid, right? In a sense, Daniel's arc has been kind of muddy. But we see now that it was really key for him to admit his fear.
Miyagi comes in, and I think this is a great point that Miyagi makes, which is that fear is the mind killer.
Fear is a little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fear.
Miyagi has not read Dune lately, so he's just telling Daniel he's got to let the karate out. And he gets away so that Daniel can do that. But then as Daniel's about to get up, Mike Barnes comes over and just starts telling Daniel what a loser he is. Bigoted remarks, just like all this horrible stuff. And Mr. Miyagi looks on, and Daniel has a choice, right? Which voice is he going to listen to? And it's not like Mr. Miyagi is particularly beatific in this moment. He's just resigned. He bows to Daniel like this is a respect thing. Like, you're going to do this for your own self-respect.
You got this, Daniel. And then what Daniel does is most unexpected, because in this sudden death overtime, Barnes charges just in time to see Daniel move, and what Daniel is doing isn't attacking. He's doing the kata, the very special Miyagi-Do kata that he learned.
As Sean Kanan said not too long ago on Twitter, I was really baffled by this kata. Like, I had no idea, right? And he comes for Daniel, thinking it's going to be easy to get the point, but Daniel flips him and drops him. And Mr. Miyagi smiles in relief as the crowd goes wild, and John Kreese looks on in shock. Terry Silver storms off. And Kreese is, I don't know what he's doing. He's like threatening people in the crowd.
Well, the crowd, knowing instinctively that Cobra Kai is BS, they start throwing the free Cobra Kai t-shirts back at Terry and Kreese.
Yeah,
and Kreese just kind of grabs one and goes back into the crowd and lunges like he's going to start attacking people in the crowd.
I like John Avildsen. Once again, the Capra-esque nature of John Avildsen. It's like, he's like, no, these people would not accept swag from jerks.
That's right.
They would rather have no shirt. But as we say that, we see Mr. Miyagi and Daniel celebrating, hugging because the film is over. So rather than panning in on Mr. Miyagi, smiling in a still at Daniel, we see the last shot of them hugging together.
Get a nice hug.
Nice hug. They are now on equal footing, at least, or so we were meant to believe at the end of this show.
And yes, equal footing is a great way to put it. And with that, we have reached the conclusion of The Karate Kid, Part 3.
I keep waiting for the episode title, but that is the title.
That is the title.
Wow, we made it, Colin. We did it.
We did it, Jenny. So now I'm going to ask you the traditional question that I ask at the end of these things, which is, what did you think of this movie, Jenny?
Oh my God. I was really not looking forward to this because Terry Silver, I don't think there's a villain in cinema that I hate more than Terry Silver. I was telling some of our friends in the fandom that I hate Terry Silver so much that this is true. I had to watch this movie in chunks when we were preparing to tape before, watching it while taping.
Yes.
And I was really apprehensive about it. As you know, I have not been able to listen to other people's recaps of it because I hadn't done my own and I still couldn't do it. But now that we're here, I have to say, I am thrilled having seen it again. I got to, number one, because I know what happens in it, and I rewatch it now. I appreciate on another level the craftsmanship that people brought into a movie that has such a shitty, shitty set of problems. Like it's a forced trilogy that really shouldn't have existed, and they didn't get to do the project they wanted. They had a disagreement with Jerry Weintraub as to how they should do it. With all that in mind, people brought their own game, and I'm looking at the credits, and that was Fumio Demura playing Mr. Miyagi again. Anyway, as a stunt double. Anyway, I really am impressed by it, but more than that, I am impressed by how the showrunners of Cobra Kai and their writing team and their EPs used the shortcomings of this production to create entire plot arcs for an entire new series of content. Like, it's really impressive because you can't miss just how many things there are in this film that become Cobra Kai Easter eggs.
Fair.
What about you, Colin? What are your thoughts?
Bafflement, mostly. I mean, I think...
Not as generous as I am.
I mean, I don't like to think that there's any such thing as a completely bad movie. I think that's reductive because people do work on these things and they work on them quite hard, and I appreciate that effort, no matter how exquisite or flawed, or oftentimes both, that effort is. I think what has happened in this case, I think it's interesting that you bring up the idea of a flawed trilogy because, again, after the unexpected success of The Karate Kid, the success of the sequel, it would seem that a third chapter would be inevitable, right? Like they would want to come in and come back and do more and, expand the universe more. That seems like a natural fit, and that's exactly what they eventually got to a point where they could do with the Cobra Kai TV show, right? Like they are able to expand the universe, give us another generation of Miyagi-Do and Cobra Kai, and that is all wonderful. And it's all built on the bricks of these first 3 or 4 movies, depending on the breaks.
Yeah.
And I think there is stuff in Karate Kid 3 that's salvageable. Like, you can see the bones of something in it. Like, the bones of it are solid. I just think some of the choices went left when they could have gone right, or vice versa, right? So, like, there's some ideas that really work. Like, the whole idea of Daniel getting lured away to join Cobra Kai because, again, to use a Star Wars metaphor, like he's lured away by the quick and easy path. That could have been something, like you could have built a whole movie on that. But it just, the way they've set it up in this movie is weird and flawed, and the whole idea of setting up dramatic stakes should be that the consequences should feel unavoidable.
Yeah.
And they never quite get to that point in this movie. Like, the way they constructed the danger or the threat to Daniel isn't through a mistake Daniel made or through some circumstances that came on him unexpectedly. It's because Kreese wanted revenge, but he didn't want to get it himself. Like, again, the whole idea of Terry Silver is strange because, yeah, I mean, I guess it's a neat idea to introduce a completely new villain in the third chapter, but all Terry is a substitute for Kreese. I mean, they basically say it in the movie. In the beginning, like, Kreese comes in and is like, okay, I'm going to take up this revenge for you. Like, I'm going to be your revenge proxy. And that's a very weird place to start off with any character.
Yeah.
Because, again, what does Terry care about Daniel or Mr. Miyagi other than the fact that they got one over on Kreese?
I know.
It's very strange. Like, all the choices start from a place of genuinely wanting to do something interesting, but they wind up in such a different place than you would ever expect them to be. Yeah. And again, all the dramatic stakes are based around trying to make Daniel do something that the first two movies have established that his character is not gonna do. And again, like, the climax of the movie isn't Daniel being forced into a situation where he has no choice but to be in the tournament. The whole movie is like him constantly having to be coerced to choose to be in the tournament. It's not that he never feels like he doesn't have a choice. It's that people keep kind of twisting his arm and he keeps like being like, okay. Like, it's so weird.
It's almost like Ralph Macchio having to make the Karate Kid Part 3, even though none of them were that thrilled with where it was going.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
yeah.
I mean, they say in the movie, it's like you can't make someone do something they don't want to do, yet the whole premise of the movie is built around trying to make Daniel do something he doesn't want to do. That's a very weird narrative puzzle to build your movie around.
It's really interesting because one of the main themes is like, Daniel, figure out what you want to do. Daniel, find your way. And Daniel's like, no, I have this received narrative or this received narrative, or this guy is just like wrecking stuff, so I gotta go do a thing.
Right. It's like there are so many other cool choices that they could have made that would have gotten them to the same place. I keep thinking about the Karate Kid 3 that could have been but never was.
Like, you mean like the one in which Jessica Andrews is actually the real Karate Kid?
Or the idea that maybe Daniel does go to college in the first act, but then he finds himself kind of right back in the same situation he was in high school, where he's the weirdo, he's the odd kid out, and he starts getting picked on again. And it's like he sees that even though he's supposed to have a new beginning, his life finds himself right back in this cycle, and that's why he has to like find his way. Maybe Terry's there. Maybe Terry's the dean of the school, right?
Yeah.
And there's so many things that could have happened that didn't.
Maybe you need an accountant archive of our own.
Maybe I do, but maybe I'm busy working on my own things.
Sure. Okay. I mean, so I feel like there's another more alongside that, and the confusion surrounding Daniel's arc, which is, what is Daniel's real arc? Is it learn to become a pacifist like Mr. Miyagi? Is it learn to be honest about your fear, learn to confront your fear? It's like all these different things at once, and it's muddled and murky. Again, gives ample plot fodder to the Cobra Kai showrunners. But the problem also is that they don't have an arc for Mr. Miyagi, right? The Karate Kid Part 1, both Daniel and Mr. Miyagi had arcs. They were co-stars of that film. Or as Ralph says, Pat was my partner in that franchise. And the same thing in Karate Kid Part 2. Like, they were both on a journey. Mm-hmm. With Mr. Miyagi, it was to stand up to his friend and to figure out how to own his choices and inhabit his his father's shoes, even with the risk of Sato. And for Daniel, Daniel's arc was much more muted, but it was there. It was come along, it was help Mr. Miyagi. It was to kind of make his own way and to learn about a new place.
Mm-hmm.
He was sort of in a picaresque, like, I'm on a journey learning these things. And frankly, now that I think about it too, I understand even more Mr. Miyagi's confusion about why would he even want to go to the tournament? Because after you've kicked ass in an ancient Okinawan fortress, literally saving the girl, why would you care about the All Valley Championship? There's a serious imbalance between their plot arcs, and it takes away Mr. Miyagi's character dimensionality, but neither of them really have dimension as characters in this. We just know that they have had it, and that they're very good actors who, in a few epic scenes, can restore our memory of their acting, and they're inhabiting those roles in much more dimensional ways.
There are scenes together in this movie where they do sell it, and it does feel like the previous two movies again. The amount of effort to get there and the whole, risk versus effort proposition there is pretty daunting, because it's like by the time the scenes that we get that are like that are so few and far between. And again, it just makes me wish that for a Karate Kid 3 that never was, where it's like, okay, maybe Mr. Miyagi and Daniel are back in California, but now, without the apartment complex to take care of and without his own business, like Mr. Miyagi is feeling kind of adrift, like he misses Japan, he misses being with Yukie, like, maybe at the end of this movie he decides to move back to Japan, or he decides to start this whole new chapter of his life. Maybe the bonsai tree store is his idea. Maybe he decides to go into the foot powder business and maybe he starts to lose sight of what's important to him, which is Daniel. Like, maybe they start to drift apart in the third one, and then the third act is
that, but I agree.
But again, for setting up a narrative,
this.
exactly.
Yes.
But for setting up a narrative stakes, that's pretty compelling, because then that makes it feel so good when they get back together in that third act.
Yeah, or there's a way in which that Daniel is at a threat that Mr. Miyagi doesn't let Daniel know about. Daniel's under a threat that Mr. Miyagi knows and Daniel doesn't know.
Right.
Which would be a new twist where Mr. Miyagi, I don't know. There, like you said, there are just plenty of ways in which they could have pushed it further. And clearly in producing this, they were probably asked to parallel other films at the time, right? Terry Silver is a textbook villain.
We mentioned Batman '89. He could have also been a villain in a RoboCop movie. He could have been a villain in a Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. The possibilities would have been endless for that character in other movies.
Exactly.
But he felt weirdly out of place in Karate Kid.
Yeah, because the villains in the Karate Kid franchise are grounded in real cultural contexts, right? Johnny Lawrence, even without the Cobra Kai series, was a villain whose role and humanity was evident.
Mm-hmm.
It was clear how he got there. It was clear that he was an entitled dude who, had a sexist claim on Allie and then all these things. But then when given the opportunity to see that this situation was wrong, he was hesitant, and he was sort of in this way, at least, a victim of John Kreese, right?
Yeah.
With Chozen, we see, even though there's a little less elaboration about masculinity in Japan, we see the ways in which that he's trying to live up to the tough guy pressure of Sato,
mm-hmm.
right? And that he's being a tough guy himself. And it's, again, like a kind of a Johnny Lawrence situation. But this, there's just nothing,
Yeah.
There's just nothing.
But again, I see the seeds of something that could have worked, especially in that last act where Terry Silver's talking about franchising Cobra Kai and making it the only style of karate in the Valley. Again, I see a better Karate Kid 3 movie to where maybe that is the main threat. Maybe Kreese has moved away, but Silver buys the rights to Cobra Kai and still wants to franchise it, and maybe he still buys a karate champion in Mike Barnes, and maybe they don't go after Mr. Miyagi and Daniel directly, but as like Cobra Kai begins to become more popular, like Miyagi starts seeing like more kids on the street in like Cobra Kai shirts, and maybe they're starting to like rough up people outside of like Mr. Miyagi's little trees or
something.
something.
Wait, are you saying the plot of Cobra Kai happens but in the 80s?
I mean, yeah, that could have been the existential threat in both Part 1 and Part 2. Like, Miyagi is a pacifist, right?
Yes.
He will not fight, and he only chooses to fight under the most extreme circumstances. And again,
and on Halloween.
If it was a situation that later kind of happens in the Cobra Kai TV series, where it's like Miyagi sees Cobra Kai beginning to kind of take over and like this mentality, and he sees the writing on the wall that, Silver and Mike Barnes, the bad boy of karate, are going to take over the valley. He's like, Daniel, I'm sorry, but we got to saddle up and we got to get you back in that tournament one more time. And maybe it's a Back to the Future 3 situation where the roles are kind of reversed, and Daniel doesn't want to fight, and it's Miyagi who then has to make the case for standing up for something, again.
And then Mr. Miyagi gets a SkyTrain.
And then Mr. Miyagi gets a SkyTrain at the end. We're just kind of workshopping fan fiction, but it kind of goes back to the point of like, you can kind of see that what they filmed and put on screen felt like maybe a third draft, and they could have done like a couple more drafts and got it to where it needed to be to feel like a really complete, full, movie trilogy, and they just never quite got there.
No, and they knew it too. I think that's the other thing that's kind of a bummer. Okay, I have one more question. And also, I just want to remark, y'all, in our office, we have a whiteboard that says Days Without Spaceballs reference, and it's 0. And truly, Spaceballs is...
We have a GIF of it available as well.
We
if you
do.
need one.
Or a GIF, depending on your religious persuasion. And it's true that Spaceballs is the film that we quote most of all, I think, maybe. I mean, we also quote a lot of Star Trek, Star Wars, and The Karate Kid.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that Spaceballs is probably the one that is throughout the whole day. But, whenever we're talking in Miyagi-verse, we almost need a Days Without Back to the Future when we're doing serious Miyagi-verse talk, because there's just, once again, and multiple podcasts have said it,
Yeah, I think some of the other podcasts...
We all are in agreement.
I think Cobra Kai Companion...
The showrunners are also in it. Like, it's Back to the Future. So it's just really strange, like...
Marty and Daniel do feel cut from the same cloth. I think that's what people are kind of picking up on. And Doc and Miyagi are also kind of like...
They're two weird guys who live
oddball
alone.
mentors,
yeah.
And they're plucky but determined. They're not literally their sons, but they're definitely, there's definitely a paternal relationship there that people lock into.
And Elizabeth Shue.
Elizabeth Shue, yeah.
Exactly.
It all connects.
And 80s villainy. I mean, let's not forget that Back to the Future 2 is as ridiculous in its own way as Karate Kid 3 is.
That's true.
And they both have the same kind of person who seems like the 45th president of the United States.
I mean,
So I have one final question, then we must wrap it up because we've been going on for over 2 hours. And that is, I'm curious, how did Cobra Kai mine this for arcs, and or how did Cobra Kai improve this movie?
I mean, you pointed out that I kind of got there in my off the cuff remarks, which is Cobra Kai took some of the natural places that Karate Kid 3 felt like it could have gone, and they just kind of built on those bones. Instead of Silver, franchising Cobra Kai and taking over the valley, Johnny was able to do that. And that feels a lot more natural because Johnny was Kreese's student. He had a direct relationship, and there's a direct correlation between Johnny and Kreese and Daniel and Miyagi that feels natural, and it all dovetails into each other. They're yin and yang. It all works.
So that's the improvement.
That's the improvement, for sure.
I really believe that Cobra Kai mined most of its arcs from this movie. I mean, obviously, there's the fathers and sons stuff. There's the underdog story. There's the immigrant narrative, and that is from the original Karate Kid film and the second one. But this one has the toxic masculinity angle that...
True. I feel also that we learn a lot. I think we learn the most about Kreese in this movie than we learn about anything else.
And Cobra Kai's philosophy.
Right. And Kreese and Cobra Kai's philosophy and that stuff all flows mostly out of this movie. So a lot of that mythology is mined directly from here.
Yeah.
And expanded upon.
And I think also that because this movie is camp in a way that the other movies are not, it creates that comic potential that the Cobra Kai showrunners with their own background were able to really actualize, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like, to mention another franchise, one thing that I had to say about The Last Jedi, which some people were surprised because I was not a fan of the Star Wars prequel trilogy, especially after it came out. I think it's a great story, but kind of like a bad History Channel reenactment of itself. When The Last Jedi came out, it was the first one of the new movies. I loved the story in The Last Jedi, but that's just me. Everyone's entitled to their own, But I thought it was the first one that managed to tonally unite the feel of the old trilogy, the polish of the new trilogy, and the kind of weird campy moments of the prequel trilogy. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's the same thing with this film, that this film gives Cobra Kai room to be silly. And it also, solidifies that murals are very important in the Miyagi-verse. There's always a mural and there's always a montage.
Yes.
Right? Like the montage is real here. And that is what sets up a lot of the technique that they use in Cobra Kai for quickly establishing the tone and the attitude of different characters and different groups.
I agree with that. I think you've also hit upon something that I want to kind of tag as well, which is this idea of uniting the old narrative and a new narrative, and then also kind of weaving in the meta.
Yeah.
Which is something that modern reboots do really well. Whether you're talking about continuations like The Last Jedi, or what they're doing with new Star Trek shows, or what they're doing with James Bond movies or Marvel movies. It's taking the camp and synthesizing it in with new elements to make something that still feels true, right?
Yep.
Like, I think that's the idea that kind of flows through a lot of modern narratives is, you don't have to slavishly recreate something to continue it.
That's right.
You can marry it. You can infuse new elements into it as long as it continues to feel like the old thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's the important thing. It doesn't have to be exact. It doesn't have to be shot on the same film. It doesn't have to have the same actors.
Some people think it does, but I agree with you. Yeah. What really makes it work is that it feels...
The trick is to making it feel like the old thing. I think that's what Cobra Kai does really well.
Yeah.
And I think that's where Part 3 let us down.
Yeah, in terms of feeling like itself.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like when Star Wars movies aren't good, like the weak moments of the prequel trilogy, a couple of moments of Rise of Skywalker, although I loved Force Awakens. But when these major tentpole movies suddenly aren't as good as they were.
Right.
In some key areas, it's almost like you're watching a weird dream of it that isn't quite the same.
Yeah.
But it's a real success story for this franchise, for the Miyagi-verse, that we get to see. It's not like they Star Wars holiday specialed this. Like, they want to make Karate Kid Part 3 a part of their deal because it gives them so much story potential to explore what the hell went wrong with Daniel, as well as Johnny. And so it's lucky that we're getting to talk about this show. No,
in a weird
franchise.
way, this is a good setup before we go into Cobra Kai Season 3, because I think, for better or for worse, this is where we see our characters at their most flawed, or at least Daniel. And so, yeah, this is what they build on in Cobra Kai, and I think we have not heard the last of this mythology, specifically from Part 3, although I'm sure Part 2 is going to get referenced a lot in Season 3 as well.
Well, they're fans of the of the mix-em-ups, right? Like, we did some elements of 1, 2, and 3 in 1, and then the second season felt very Karate Kid 3 in terms of just the looming evil. And now Season 3 will give us some of Karate Kid Part 2.
Well,
we did it.
I think we've done it. Yes, we've broken down everything you could possibly ever say about Karate Kid 3.
I'm sure Watch Party could say a few more things.
And I'm sure we will. Maybe we will revisit some of these points.
I am really proud that, like Daniel LaRusso, I faced my fears and rewatched the Karate Kid Part 3.
Fair. Can you do the same for the next Karate Kid?
We'll see.
Okay.
I might need some special foot powder
Okay.
In order to
Yes,
survive that.
Yeah, let's get you special foot powder and then we'll be back.
But that might give us a clue as to Hawk's origin story.
It might.
Because there's a hawk.
Wink. There is a hawk in
Sound
that,
effect.
technically. Yeah. I'll drop one in.
Thank you.
Yes. But anyway, until next time, I've been Colin Canada.
I've been Jenny Carlson.
And we'll see you around the Miyagi-verse.
See you around the Miyagi-verse. This podcast has been produced and hosted by Colin Canada and Jenny Carlson.
Our music is by Chepo. You can find us at Karate Kid Pod on Twitter.
And wherever you download podcasts.